Good evening. Welcome to the May 5th, Cinco de Mayo 2021 Abington Finance Committee meeting. We will unfortunately not be partying, at least until the end of the meeting tonight. We will be continuing our process of preparing for town meeting, which now stands at 19 days away, May 24th, Monday, in just under 3 weeks. We are finishing up our look at both the budget and both the special and annual town meeting warrants and providing our recommendations for the articles on those warrants. For those that have been following along at home, we provided recommendations for most of the articles last week, but have a few that are still outstanding. We have a large quantity of guests with us tonight. I will go through as they are ordered on my Zoom screen. We have our town moderator, Sean Riley. We have our treasurer collector, Sonia Hodge. We have our town manager, Scott Lambiase. We have our deputy police chief, Chris Cutter. We have our fire chief, John Nuttall. We have a couple of representatives from KBA, the company doing the police station study, Todd Costa and Sean Smigel. I hope I pronounced that correctly. We have firefighter Derek Haimadi from the Fire Station Building Committee. And we have Jared Driscoll, who I'm guessing by the logo is also a firefighter, but I have not met yet. So I apologize, Jared, for not knowing there. And we have our assistant town manager and finance director, Sue Moquin, as well. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting. We have a variety of articles that we need to get through. I want to be mindful of people's time, so I would like to go through the ones that we know we need people who are guests on this for first. So I would like to start, I think that probably the easiest one to get out of the way would be for a kind of the combo of Deputy Chief Cutter and Chief Nuttall, which is on the annual town meeting warrant. And it is the article regarding military leave for town employees. And I will bring that up in just a second. Switching my share to the annual town meeting. Okay. Get down to the article. Planning board articles take up a lot of space. So first one is now numbered Article 35, the petition to remove, nope, sorry, wrong one. Article 37, the petition to adopt military leave statute. Last week when we were discussing this as a committee, we had some questions, and I think we would like to get the take from both the police and fire departments, the departments that we believe would have the highest likelihood of being impacted by this particular article.
Yeah, would you like for me to speak on that? Or,
if you don't mind, yeah, that would be great.
Okay, are there any particular questions, or should it just give you kind of a overview of my understanding of it?
Yeah, I think the overview would be great. Really, the question was, how would this affect your department if someone were to take this, as far as both budgeting, but also staffing and like interim staffing while someone was there. If you would replace that person, if it would just be sort of a loss of a person while they were out or whatnot. Because if you were to replace the person, we would essentially be kind of double paying that position while that person was out and things like that. So
yeah, so right now we have, there is, as far as I know, there is no law that's been adopted by the town. There are two general laws that govern some pay for National Guard and reservists. And the one is the warrant, Chapter 33, Section 59, and the other one are the Acts of 2003, Chapter 137. But it's my understanding that neither of those laws have been adopted by the town, so neither of them apply. And that which brings us to the warrant article. So when looking at 33, Section 59, one thing is there's an awful lot of variables that are contained in the law itself. There are several different subsections with the law. There's a subsection A through D. Actually, it goes to F, but basically A through D kind of stipulates what an officer or what a person would receive for various circumstances as far as how they were activated. So and it also changes, it also varies, it appears. Now, one thing, please, this is just my interpretation of the law. I think that at some point, someone that's more versed in this end of things would probably be best to give you a more definitive answer, but I'll give you my interpretation as far as how I viewed the language. But it looks like the language was written for both the National Guard and the reservists, but there are two different pay scales, basically, or pay procedures for both of them. So the first section, Section A, covers basically in the wording of the law is during service and uniform services. So that's kind of an open, broad. So Section A, and bear with me here, but Section A deals with both the National Guard and U.S. reservists, and it covers uniform service, annual training under Section 60, drills and parades under Section 61. So generally, Section A covers training, and it affords 40 days in each federal fiscal year for compensation, and that would be the compensation where we would pay the officer for his full pay. After those 40 days, we would then go down to paying the officer the difference in pay between his military pay and his pay here at the department. Section B of the statute seems to apply to just the National Guard, and with Section B, it provides for 30 more days of paid training, and it only applies for when the National Guardsman is called out under Section 38, 40, or 41. So you can see the difference between Section A is for training predominantly, or it's kind of a general use, and then Section B is for National Guard only, and they get 30 more days. Reservists wouldn't get the 30 additional days. They would only fall under the first 40 days, and then they would drop down to the difference in pay. The National Guard would get the first 40 days for their annual training throughout the year. And then it's my interpretation of it is that if after that or during that period, they are then activated for what we saw in the last year. We had an officer that performed some law enforcement services throughout the state during some of the demonstrations that were happening. And that would fall into Section 38, 40, or 41 in one of those sections. So that particular officer would have been afforded another 30 days of payment from the department at full pay. And as you guys stated, this isn't the only pay that they're getting. They're getting obviously they're getting their salary from the military as well during that period. And then there's a couple different other examples of when an officer would be activated. If I had a reserve officer, I had one reserve officer, I believe he was in the reserves. He went to New York during COVID, and he's a medic, and he went to New York for a period of time. And I believe that he would have been activated partially under Section C of the statute, which is where the federal government can activate these troops full time for various reasons. But in those particular days, although he would have been covered full pay during his training, when he was activated for that period of time that he spent a month or two in New York, that he would only be eligible for the difference in pay. So what I did was try to take a look and try to put some numbers to what I think is the interpretation and how it breaks out for me as kind of an example. And I took 3 different offices that I currently have. Well, one just recently left in the last month and a half. But I used his numbers to kind of give you an idea. One particular officer I've had that's been out since 2018, and we haven't been paying him for that period. If this law was enacted, it would appear to me that we would then have paid him $7,400, roughly $7,400 for that first benefit of his time in training or activation. And with that would then increase, that would again repeat every fiscal year, every federal fiscal year, because every federal fiscal year he would re-up again on those 40 days that he's eligible for pay for. So this particular officer is gone since 2018. We would be looking at $7,400 for each particular year. So at this particular point, that would be, probably an added cost for my budget of about $14,000. And again, these numbers are approximate, but it gives you an idea of how it would impact us. Another example is a particular officer that spent quite a bit of time last year doing various active duty for the National Guard again. And he logged out, was away from the policing job for about 1,000, almost 1,100 hours last year in 2020. Someone like him being away for 1,100 hours, the way I broke it down was, okay, he would get that same $7,400 for his training, but he would also qualify, because I believe he was activated under Section B of the statute, that he would also be qualified for 30 additional days where he was activated to help with the COVID problem. So I would anticipate an additional almost $5,000 that I would have had to have paid him, or will have to pay him, if the scenario was the same. So his total benefit for 2020, or the impact that I would have had on the budget for 2020 for him, would have been an additional $12,000. Then I took a U.S. Reserve officer that I have to show the difference. He would have been covered for his training under Section A. So I assigned the same number to him, $7,400, that's not planned for in the budget, that I would need to budget for. He wouldn't be covered under Section B of the chapter and section, because he's a U.S. reservist and he's not a National Guardsman. And it seems to me that Section B is specific to National Guardsmen. But he then would continue, because he was activated. This particular officer went to New York for the reserves. He then would receive the difference in pay in that between his time, his military pay and his police pay. And that would have equated to about $3,000 additional dollars for the period that he was away. He was actually away from duty here in Abington for 544 hours. So you can see the difference. I had one particular officer that's been away since 2018. His benefit was about $14,000. I have an officer that was away for over 1,000 hours. His benefit was $12,000. And I have an officer that was away for 544 hours. And his benefit was totaled of about $10,000. So that's a good breakdown. I mean, on average, if I had to look at where we stand, it's about $12,000 per officer. But again, there's all kinds of variables that play into this. One is their military pay. A couple of these particular offices were officers in the military, so their pay is substantially higher than the enlisted officers. So the particular officer that's been gone since 2018, and the particular officer that was gone for 1,000 hours was in the last year. Neither of them would get any difference in pay, because their military pay was more. So although this particular officer since 2018, he's been gone from the department for over 2,000 hours. I wouldn't have to pay or make up any difference in those pays. However, when you look at the officer that's the U.S. reservist, the difference in pay is almost $400. So each day that he was activated, I would then, that's where I came up with a $3,000 figure for him to cover for that period of time at almost $400 a day that he was actually on active duty. So there are so many different variables that come into play on my interpretation as far as how much, the departments would need to budget for or see as an increase. But for me, roughly, I would be looking at currently, I have 4 offices that are on, we had more, but, for various reasons, a couple of them have gone. But I believe I have a total of 4 right now, and it would be about a $50,000 impact on my budget for that. And I can answer any questions or clarify anything, because I know it's kind of confusing now.
Yeah, just curious, Deputy Chief. So, do we have someone that can help us, get crystal clear clarity? Because as you were saying, it's kind of your interpretation, and I'm reading it too, and it's not like it's super crystal clear. So,
I've already sent it over to town council, and they've looked at it, and it's pretty much, as he said, it depends on the branch of the military, or whether it's a federal or National Guard, and depends on what the duty is will change. So we really have no way to foresee what's what. So I think the only thing we can do is exactly what the deputy did, is kind of look at the history and the worst case scenarios and try to budget on that. But the way he's interpreting it and reading it is pretty much what I get with going over it with council.
I think one of the, oh, go ahead, Chris.
I think what the deputy chief gave us is a very good estimate that we can work with.
Yep.
Have you replaced those off? You either replaced those officers when they're not there, or you fill in with overtime, correct?
Yeah. So that again is in the past we have. And I know every department's different, but in our department, we have basically decreased services by not filling those shifts all the time, in order to not increase the aspects of the budget for like 2020 during the COVID pandemic. So there's a combination of both. If the town wants to maintain services and maintain the level of services that we're currently having, well, then there's a substantial increase in overtime costs to backfill for those offices. I mean, in taking the full-time officer, the high-end number officer, and the low-end number officer, overtime cost to maintain that level of service fully would be approximately, I didn't add them up to, well, I can, approximately 100 and, looks like approximately $150,000 to keep those services the same. And there's going to be a point where, depending on the number of offices I have, how much can I actually, where we're going to hit that line where I'm either filling it on a temporary basis for a period of time, or I'm not filling it at all. And as far as staffing is concerned, where I can go down on that staffing. The officer that's been gone since 2018, we effectively have really not filled that position. And so we haven't spent, we just kind of assumed that position is not here right now. And we've worked around that in the last 3 years. But again, another variable is how many offices I have currently on staff. And the other thing is how much I can work those offices regarding overtime. I mean, there's only so much overtime. We've seen it before. Yep. with officer burnout. So even if I have the money in the budget to start filling every shift, I obviously have to be cognizant of how much can I put on the offices that are here.
Is this like, did I hear, I just wanted to ask, is this like a 3-to-1 ratio that we're talking here? I just want to make sure I had the numbers correct. We basically pay out 150 in overtime, and we could solve this with 50?
No, what I'm saying is 50 would be an increase, a definite increase once this law is adopted. because those are costs that I'm not paying now. But what I'm saying is, what we have done in the past, there's been some shifts have been filled, some shifts haven't been filled. But if we were to maintain all those shifts, filling them all, it would be a cost of about 150,000. Well, let me just go back and correct a little bit. That would be the overtime cost, but we also have to consider that there is going to be there's going to be a bit of a savings in their salary and wages because they're not here. So in some cases, although I'm paying close to $400 to make up the difference in salary, that's for the week. That's different than the $1,200 they were making. So ultimately, so if this particular chapter and section is adopted by the town, and we wanted to maintain services to the level we have, then it would be an ultimate cost of 82,000. And I know that's a different number, but that's taken into account the amount of money that I'm saving in their salary because they're not here, if that helps answer the question.
Matt, if I can jump in here quickly too, and
Thank you, Chief. Yes.
Deputy, thank you for going first because you did the brunt of the work on that. I appreciate that. The police have also had more experience with this than the fire department has. The fire department just hired one new member who is in the National Guard. So this is going to be really our first test with this. And just to answer the question, because I know what is going to come next, if not from this board, then anybody watching, is why did we hire somebody in the National Guard? Two reasons. He was number 2 on the entire state civil service list, and he's an incredible employee so far. And legally, we cannot discount somebody because if they have military service. So it is what it is. But I don't think it's going to be a major issue with him at this point in his career until at some point, if he does get out of the National Guard. But it is what it is right now. So my interpretation of this, and again, I will also want to see the opinion of town council, as well as I think the town treasurer, if she has anything, and I think Scott's already working on it. These positions are already fully funded for the year. So when we put the budget together, we've already figured, for each different employee, what that particular salary is for the anticipated hours of the year. For the fire department, it's about 2,084 hours a year times their hourly rate. That's how we get their straight time figure. Now, if somebody is activated for a period of time, when they're away, my interpretation of this law, which I could be wrong, is it would allow us to make sure that they're going to get whatever their salary was for the town of Abington, in case maybe they're making less money from the National Guard, we would make up that difference. The deputy brought up a good point, and this is one that I didn't really think of because I don't know what my employee's rate of pay is with the National Guard yet, because we have not encountered that. If his rate of pay is at a higher point, there may be just a net cost savings for a period of time he'd be away. But again, I'm talking without hearing from town council. The real cost incurred is the backfill of the overtime, because we do fill position for position to maintain that minimum staffing that we always have. So a few brief figures on this from some quick calculations that I came up with is, assuming it's a National Guard member, and if it's their typical training activations for the year, which I believe is a weekend a month plus 2 weeks during the year, that's coming up with about 288 hours for weekends and about 80 hours for those 2 weeks. The average overtime rate to fill all of those hours is roughly $19,500 in overtime costs. I can absorb that in my budget. That would be the minimum. Now, like the deputy said, if we do start seeing some of these, this member become activated longer for whatever reason, that cost could significantly rise if they're away for months, or the worst case scenario, if they're away for the entire year. That cost would rise significantly, obviously, at that time. Now, we do have a couple of somewhat examples of employees that we have had go for different activations. They're not National Guard. One, we've had a couple of members on a FEMA team, FEMA rescue teams. Usually we're reimbursed. Sometimes we're reimbursed fully on that, including the overtime costs. Sometimes we're only reimbursed partial of their salary with no overtime costs. And in the past, we've just, basically funded the overtime on that, and we reimbursed about 75% of what they were getting otherwise. The other example is I have one member who's on a civilian military medical team, or a civilian medical team, that's been activated several times during the last year. I don't believe this law would cover that the way this is written. Again, I'd be deferring to town council. So, there's a little bit of savings on his actual weekly rate he gets, but again, the real cost is incurred in the overtime to replace his position when he's gone. Ironically, all of his activations thus far, I believe, have been COVID, and we've been fully refunded because it was a COVID expense. So there's really been a net zero impact to the town of Abington on this one, other than, like Deputy Cutter said, there is a manpower burnout. We're just getting the other employees that are still here to work that additional shift in addition to theirs. So I'm not sure if that simplified it or complicated it without really hearing a town council or another example of what this would be, as well as we've just hired this employee and we really don't have any experience with the fire department side. I don't have a lot that I can really share for experience with that.
I appreciate that, Chief. It's definitely good information. So my next question before we jump into other questions from the committee to Scott or anyone else is, outside of the one firefighter and the 4 police officers, do we have any other town employees that this would apply to that you know of?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
And Matt, if I could just clarify again, because I know I went around in a circle there a little bit, but to keep level services with 3, and I only figured that in with three of the offices, but that's where we were looking at that 82,000. So, and there's a range, when we talk about different pay and different activations in different branches. When I break it out by the officer that's been gone since 2018, that overall impact for the year would be 34,000 versus 28,000 versus 18,000. So that's how much the range changes. I mean, if we had, 3 offices that were at that same level of 34, that's going to substantially increase it. And if we had 3 offices that were at that 18,000, it's going to decrease that number a bit. And there's just no way to tell, to predict the future and predict what that number is going to be.
All the other towns have this, is it like a percentage, or do we know?
I was going to ask if any other towns have adopted this.
The only town that I've heard of, I've heard of 2. I've heard Stoughton and Randolph, but I can't confirm that. But I'm pretty sure on Randolph, and I just heard Stoughton may have not a very reliable source. So, but other than that, I haven't heard of any others.
Matt,
Yep.
So this puts us in a difficult predicament because I understand the looking to make up the difference. I feel like if someone's activated and needs to serve in a National Guard or the Army or whatever the capacity, and they're not getting paid what they would be getting paid if they didn't get activated, I wouldn't want to discourage anyone from participating or becoming a employee of either the fire department or the police department, because they would make more if they stayed here. But so I understand the aspect of making up the difference in pay. That makes sense to me. But backfilling and covering and covering those hours, or asking the officers that are still here to work overtime and cover those hours is hard for me, I guess. That's the only way I can put it.
If I could just,
And it's so unpredictable because, again, we are guided by the civil service. So the candidates that we receive going forward can be, you could end up with 5 National Guardsmen.
And
Or you could have a department that is, and which, again, not opposed to. I think it's great to have fire and police with military background and that training. I just am wondering how we can budget for that.
yeah, and I do tend to agree with you, Barbara. I like the sort of making up the difference concept as a concept, but some of the other, like the full-time costs when they're also being paid.
Right. I don't think anyone
different
should
thing.
lose pay because they're doing something to protect the country. You know, you shouldn't lose pay. So because that discourages people from going into those branches. And I would never want to do that.
That's something though that if we wanted to do something simply to say, without adopting this, I could do it as a matter of bargaining with the units that, you know, we realize that you want to do this, or we, you know, if we think that this is creating some sort of a retention problem, we could offer that strictly through bargaining to say that if you are in the military and you are activated, the town will make up the difference between what your regular rate pay is,
your town pay and what your military pay is.
Yeah, I mean, we could easily do that to deal with it on both police and fire. And to be quite honest with you, I don't that, again, I don't think that's a bad thing or a budget buster. I think, you know, I think the problem falls if we do that. I think we're already seeing when they activate, and we're not doing this, we're already paying the overtime.
Yes.
So that this is, half of this is already happening and we're dealing with it.
Yeah, it's the paying the person's salary and paying for the overtime to cover for the time that the person is not there, and we're paying them is a double dip that can be costly both in money and, as Deputy Chief Cutter said several times, costly as far as the health of the department and the officers or the firefighters within it.
And again, like, you know, I don't want to discourage anyone from the military from working for the town of Abington, whether in a fire capacity or a police capacity,
or any other capacity,
any other capacity. So and they shouldn't be taking a pay cut to go and do things that protect the country or aid, whether it's with COVID, whether it's with you know, whatever situations go on around the country, the world, whatever. We absolutely, in my opinion, we absolutely should make sure that that's an avenue for them, that they're not then having a cut in pay and not being able to budget for their own families and bills and whatever. But just finding a way to be able to do that and still cover the services that we need to cover as a town.
So two things, if I may, and that's why I brought up there are 2 laws that generally discuss pay for National Guards and reservists. And that other law is exactly what you guys are discussing now. And it's, again, my interpretation, but the Acts of 2003, Chapter 137, that specifically talks Barbara, to what you're saying, and that if the town was to adopt that particular law, then that just stipulates making up the difference in pay for those units. So there in and of itself is, it seems to be exactly what some of you are talking about. The other thing, just to keep in mind that we're already, you know, as Scott said, it's like we're already doing one half, or I'm not sure if Matt said it, but we're already doing one half of this equation, which is we already have guys that are leaving. We're already filling overtime, and we're already like signing this law doesn't affect that in any way, shape, or form. What we're doing for backfilling and what we're the workload that's being placed on the officers when these guys are away at military duty, this law doesn't change that. These guys are still leaving, and they're leaving for hours, and it's still incumbent upon us to backfill when needed and cover that. So just to differentiate that this law isn't going to change what's already in practice today.
So Chris, the change would be paying the difference, or
Well,
or the 40 days and then activation 30 more days,
so
depending on the officer.
Yeah, so the change, Barbara, is going to be, you know, when I looked at 4 officers, that's going to be that $50,000. That's the increase. You know, that's in my department, that because that's covering training time where we have to pay them 40 days, and that's going to cover activation. That's just an example of what I've dealt with in the last year, but that's where that $50,000 figure comes from. And that would be in change, and that would be an increase once this is signed into effect.
So if I'm devil's advocate and I say, okay, so let's say that you've got 10 guys, I'm just high number, 10 guys on the department that are, and so it's only National Guard and reserves. This does not apply to other branches of the military.
Well, they all have this. So the National Guard has certain branches, and the reserves have, you know, like the Air Force Reserve. So that's a reserve force. The National Guard is the Army National Guard. So it basically covers all the branches. You know, we have an officer that's a member of the Coast Guard Reserve. And, you know, without speaking to town council, I assume that the Coast Guard Reserve is covered the same way the Army Reserve is covered. So, yeah, it pretty much covers all the branches, but it covers them in different ways. Obviously, the Commonwealth, when they enacted this, you know, Chapter 33, Section 59, I'm assuming that their point was, and the law's been modified over the years since it was first enacted. But I'm assuming that it was enacted to take care of the National Guard members here in Massachusetts. And then I think over time, the law has morphed to cover all the reserve units as well. But it covers them at a different, minus the 30-day benefit. Okay.
I mean, that makes sense to me. Like, you shouldn't have to go off and be away from your job and your family at a lower rate of pay than what you could stay home for, because I feel like that does discourage members of the reserves to be police officers or firemen.
If I could, too, I'm sorry, Barbara, I thought you were done.
So if you had 10 officers where this law applied, you would then have to backfill with overtime, correct?
That's correct, but we're already going to have to do that without the law.
Right.
Oh, okay,
They would have to do that regardless of the law.
Right. No matter how many
The only
officers
difference
there are.
adopting this law would make would be what we additionally pay them while they are away,
Okay.
and for
All
how
right.
many days or how long we pay them while they're away.
I think perhaps, if I could, to simplify this, what the town manager suggested may give you the same intent of what this petition article is for, the same intent of the law, and he may be able to negotiate with the unions. And I think the town of Abington would have more control over that, because as the deputy just said, if this law, if we adopt this Chapter 39, and then the Commonwealth makes any changes to that, at that point, once we've adopted, I think we have to also go with whatever that change may be in the future, as opposed to if the town is able to negotiate with, the unions that have these members that are affected with, they may be able to, come up with something much simpler. And really, it's the intent of what this article is looking for, I think, anyway. And again, that's being said without hearing from town council's opinion, but that may be a simple way to deal with this.
John, along the thinking of that you're looking to, it seems like the law is looking to pay them what their pay scale is while they're serving the country.
I believe so. It would make them whole so that they're not losing.
Right. So they're not losing money.
Their family's not losing any income that they normally would have had they not been activated.
Right.
Yep. And I tend to agree with you, Chief, that I think the town has more control over it, and helps the town to be able to predict and budget for that while providing the same intent.
So if this is a bargaining mechanism, is this something that the finance committee would recommend anyways?
I think I think if we believe that it's better for the town manager to have the option to bargain with the collective bargaining units that include any such members that apply to this, then we would, if we think that is the better solution, then we would choose to pass over this article.
Scott, what's your understanding of that?
Yeah, I mean, I my personal preference would be to do that and let me deal with it in bargaining. But this is a citizen's petition. This was put forth by the Sergeant Davern, I think, put this forward. Chris, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure where it came from, Scott.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I guess he would deserve the opportunity to speak to it at the very least.
Absolutely, but I'm just wondering,
yeah.
like, as far as our
Is your vote?
well, right.
You could maybe do that with the, your vote could probably be that you would pass over it with the encouragement of me to to go to bargaining with something similar.
Yep.
Which I would, like I said, I mean, I'll be talking with Labor Council in the morning.
Maybe we could get an opinion as far from council how the finance committee would make its recommendation for again, depending on what the entire board feels like our intention is, how that can be conveyed in a vote or a recommendation.
Yeah, you want to clarify that we're doing it so that we're not tied to, as Chief Nuttall said, any future revisions to this law that we would have to automatically follow, and then, but still with the same intent and have a little more control over it through bargaining.
Right. That's why I'm thinking, like, if it's more of a bargaining issue between the selectman, the town manager, and the union, that we would want to have the proper language to make a recommendation.
Could we pass over and sort of defer this to Scott and his negotiation?
I generally, from what I'm hearing from the members of the committee and from the nods that I see from several of them as things are being discussed, it seems to me like the general feel is that we would like this to be something that is in the bargaining power of the town manager and not something dictated to us by the state statute. And that we would like to find a way to incorporate the intent of it without being tied to the specifics and to the changes, but have it be something that does get worked out. If
Can
that's,
I-
I
I'm
just,
sorry.
If that is the case, and that's the will of the committee, what I think we would do is, if we vote to pass over, we would want to, in the recommendation that I read at town meeting, state that that is the intent from the committee.
Quick question. Are there changes to the Quinn bill?
I'm
Recent
not sure what
changes?
Well, this is nothing, this is different than the Quinn bill altogether.
Right. No, I know. I'm just,
So I don't believe and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Quinn bill doesn't actually exist the way it originally existed. If it exists at all. It used to be something, you know, the town would offer the educational incentive to the police officers, and the state would match or reimburse for up to 50% of whatever that was. The state doesn't do that at all anymore. We do offer educational incentives in our contract, and any more than that, I'd hate to talk about right now because it is a subject of our bargaining.
okay, but so there are some incentives in a broader sense,
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
and actually we are in the process of doing comparisons with 5 or 6 surrounding towns of, you know, comparable towns, to make sure that, you know, we're competitive, that we're competitive for recruitment purposes, that we're repetitive for retainment purposes. So,
Well, that's pretty much that's why I'm asking the question, looking to see that we are trying to offer the best packages possible to any prospective employees.
Yeah, but
yeah, and unfortunately for us, I mean, this was, you know, we just started that process, and I don't think, you know, like everything else this past year, you really couldn't have asked for a worse time to start anything new. So, but yeah, no, that is, we're committed to looking at that and making sure that we're competitive all around.
All right.
And Barbara, just to answer without getting into too much detail there, but currently, as Scott said, the Quinn bill was disbanded basically through the state. And it was many years ago that the town decided to pick up the costs associated that the state dropped on it. And those offices were grandfathered in at that particular time at the same level as the Quinn bill benefit was offered. And then over time, those offices have either retired or moved on. And so currently we still have 2 offices that are grandfathered into that Quinn bill type structure. And then the rest of the department through the town has negotiated with the union in another education incentive, which is a 3% increase for their associate's degree, a 6% increase for their bachelor's degree, and a 9% increase for their master's degree. So that's currently what's in place now. We have 2 offices that fall under the old Quinn bill increases, and then the rest of the department falls under those percentages.
So those percentages, Chris, that's all officers going forward right now under the union agreement with the town.
That's correct. That's signed in. That was signed in, I believe, either if not the last CBA, but or the one just prior to that. The town negotiated that with the union.
Okay. Which I just want to, on a side note, just say, like, I that's a great incentive. I feel like, especially in the times that we're in right now, the education factor is definitely worth the money spent on the town side of things.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Pulling back to Article 37. Are there more questions? Do we have a motion?
37 or 36?
It's 37 is the new number of it. If you look at the share on the screen, my screen share right now.
He's going with the Sean numbers.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
formerly 39 now. Nope, formerly something else. Formerly 41 now. Sorry, formerly 40 now 37.
I'll make a motion to pass over with the recommendation from the finance chair at the meeting that we support the intent, but would rather have control within the town, whatever it is, town manager's control.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Russ.
It's something beeped. Who was the second?
That was from Russ.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Without any, all those in favor of passing over with the recommendation to make this part of collective bargaining?
I think Greg wants to discuss. Was he saying hi?
Greg wanted to vote.
Okay.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining?
I'm sorry, but I need to know who is here because I don't,
So,
like Katie isn't here.
yeah, I didn't get a vote from Katie on there.
Okay.
I didn't realize my video was off. I apologize.
No worries. What was your vote on that one, Katie?
I agree to pass over.
Okay, so that is 8 to nothing.
Thank
Pass.
you.
All right. So I thought that one was going to go much quicker than it did. And my apologies for starting with something longer. I think, do we have anything else for Chief Cutter, or Deputy Chief Cutter? Apologies. I don't think that we do. Deputy Chief, if you do want to stay on, I know at some point we're going to be discussing the articles about dedicating and renaming for former Officer Kokoros. We're discussing the legality of those with the town moderator. If you don't want to stay on for that, and please do not feel like you need to, we thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. I think
The information was outstanding information. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thanks for the preparation.
You guys have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Deputy.
All right. So trying to be mindful of people's time. Scott, remind me which particular article we had Sonia joining us for.
I just asked Sonia to join us for a quick presentation on where our debt is now. And within that, she'll also give you an idea of what would our debt look like if we borrow $30 million. So I think, I mean, if you would like to do that now and then jump into the fire station, it may be
I
helpful.
was going to say, since pretty much all of our other guests are here for the fire station discussion, I think it makes sense to take that up next. I just didn't want to jump into that one if Sonia was here for something quick and small and could, like, capital or
Well, I think if she does her debt presentation, she would not have to stay for any more.
rest of the discussion.
Right.
Well, then let's have Sonia do her presentation.
Okay.
Well, she's more than welcome to stay.
Sonia,
for-
do you need to share the screen or anything?
Yes, I will share my screen if that's okay.
We'll stop my share right now. And it is all yours.
Okay. So my presentation isn't very long, short and sweet, I hope, but I have all of my backup data. So if you have questions, I'll be able to answer them. We'll be talking about the current debt that we have now, and then kind of weave in the impact of a new fire station, both on our debt as well as on the tax bills. Obviously, that's going to be the big question, is how will this impact our residents? So this first chart is talking about all of our debt for all purposes except for water, sewer, and the proposed South Shore Voc Tech. So this is going to include all debt that is paid for through the operating budget as well as through debt exclusions, which, as you know, goes on top of our typical levy onto the tax bill. So it's extra money that's raised specifically for these debt exclusions. I wanted to note, because this question does come up quite a bit, is in the other debt, the darker portion on the bottom of the chart, that's going to include items like the police station building, the senior center building, and the high school windows and doors. Those are all coming off after fiscal year 27 and 28. So you can see there on fiscal year 29, that dark section is pretty low there on the scale. The middle section is the new middle high school. That is purely debt exclusion. And then the proposed fire station is the lighter color on the top, which I'm also assuming will be debt exclusion. Can't imagine we'd be able to pay for that through the operating budget. When I calculated these figures, I assumed that the amount that is being requested at this year's town meeting for the design phase will be rolled into the debt exclusion in a few years once that process is finished and we go back to town meeting and request the debt exclusion, and then of course the town election to approve a debt exclusion as well. The next slide is talking about the funding source. Since the real impact of this is the debt exclusion, I wanted to focus on that versus the other items. I do include the tax levy debt here, and you can see that's the green line at the bottom, and you can see that it's a very low amount in relation to the debt exclusions that we have. Now, again, part of the existing debt exclusion is the police station, the senior center, and the high school windows and doors that are coming off in several years. And you can see again, fiscal year 28 and fiscal year 29, those bars drop down just a tad. They're not large amounts coming off. So it's not going to make a huge impact, but every little bit counts for our residents, and we know that. So we did want to mention that, you will see a little bit of a dip there in those years.
Sonia, quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Can we afford over 5 million?
I'm sorry?
Can we afford over 5 million? Like, can we afford to be over that for a while to pay it down? Have we been over there before?
Have we had over 5 million in a
Yes.
year for debt exclusion?
Yes.
That I don't know. But again, these are debt exclusions. So this isn't this isn't part of the town's operating budget. This is, it's, like an extra line item basically on a tax bill, and we collect it specifically for that purpose, and we collect only that amount. So it wouldn't be as much a question of can the town afford it as it would be can our residents afford it, and that's why there's the town meeting vote and the election.
That's what I meant. Sorry, I don't use good words most of the time. It's just more of you're the person who sees a lot of the town people who come in to pay their taxes. Well, can they afford to jump like this?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for them. I see a small subsection of people that come in to pay their bills. Most people escrow their taxes or they mail them in. So, the people who do come in, some people complain about, we heard gripes when the school went on, when they saw their tax bills increase. We definitely heard about it. And I know that we would hear about it again if this were to be approved. So, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, and that is why we have the election and the town meeting. And anytime people do complain about it, we encourage them to attend town meetings so that they can be part of those decisions, so that they're not, bearing the brunt of other people's votes.
Would this have any impact on the town's bond rating?
That's a good question. Well, they certainly look at our debt load. I don't know that building a new fire station would necessarily impact our bond rating. they certainly wouldn't expect us to pay for it in cash. So
We
I,
discussed it with the bonding company too, though, when they did ask us what we saw coming down the pike, and what sort of projects were ahead of us. So they were aware.
that's true. We did talk in depth about our need for a new fire station and that this might be coming on in the next couple of years. Thank you.
Sonia, do you have a dollar amount, like a kind of an average dollar amount that everyone might see an increase for the fire station, like in their tax bill?
You are in luck. I certainly do.
Perfect.
This is the tax bill impact that we would expect on a $30 million bond spread over 25 years. You can see we have a $300,000 home, a $500,000 home, and a $700,000 home. And you can see over on the left, the dollar amounts per year that they would expect to see on their tax bill, in addition to the typical, not only the tax levy, but what's already being levied for the school. So this impact would just be for the fire station.
Sonia, what do we have falling off in the next couple of years as far as the levy?
Well, really not a whole lot. Like I said, the police station, senior center, and high school windows and doors are coming off. Those are being paid. The last payment is fiscal year 27 and fiscal year 28. The police station is the first to fall off. The final payment for that one is $267,800. And then in fiscal year 28, the final payment for the senior center and high school windows and doors is $185,400. So when you're talking about a fire station's first year debt payment would be 2.7 million, seeing a couple $100,000 come off isn't that impactful.
And then what about the following years? Because usually it drops down lower as the years go on. So not the first year of the payment, but the subsequent years.
Right, they do drop down. We manage our debt that way specifically so that we do see them drop down. There, you can have it so that the payments are about the same every single year for the term, but we know we're going to be adding things in future years, and so we like to see it go down to manage that impact for future projects, whether they're 20 years away or not. So I'm estimating a first year debt payment of about 2.7 million. The next year is 2.64, the following year 2.58. So it does drop down, but it's not going to be a lot every year.
Not significant, like as far as a taxpayer savings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now on year 25, that final payment, I'm estimating 1.26 million to give you some scale.
What's the total number?
The total number of the estimated cost?
Yes.
So on 30 million over 25 years with a 5% interest rate, the total cost would be 49.5 million.
Yeah, so that I think that's what everybody at least needs to know, that it's like a school again.
Yeah, the school we borrowed 46 million. Now the school, obviously we got a lot of money from the state to help pay for it, and our share was 46 million. So yeah, 30 million is 2/3.
Is it possible to share this slide with the folks at the town meeting when the time comes? Because I think it's really important for people to understand the individual impact to them as they make their vote.
That is the plan. You are the first to see this slideshow. The plan is to also show it to the Board of Selectmen on Monday. And with your feedback and their feedback, we'll make some tweaks to it to make it more understandable for the residents, and we'll present it at town meeting as well.
Is there a reason you chose 5%?
5% is a pretty common rate right now on bonded debt for municipal governments. It really depends. It could be a little bit lower than that, but I wouldn't want to mislead anybody that it would be lower when it very well could be
if we vote, the town meeting votes to approve the 3.5 million, is there a way for us to have some hedge to lock in a rate if it's lower now than it would be in 2 years? Is that something we consider?
For the design phase,
Well, no, not for the design phase. So we vote to approve the design phase, which means that we're going to go ahead with something in the order of, a range around 30 million in total. But that isn't going to hit for 2 years because the design phase has to go first. But right now rates may be lower. Is there a way for us to buy some kind of hedge that allows us to lock in that lower rate because we know eventually we're going to do it in 2 years?
unfortunately, no, there is no way to do that. We don't lock in a rate until we sell the bonds. And that can't happen until it's approved at town meeting for the full 30 million borrowing, as well as the vote at election to designate it as excluded debt. There's no way to set a rate in advance at all, really. No,
But
unfortunately.
some kind of option or anything like that.
No.
An insurance company buys, they buy options and puts and calls and things to lock in rates, even though, the rate will change, but whatever they bought covers the change.
No, those types of options are not available to municipal governments.
All right.
Sonia, what's the shortest time frame to be able to, like Chris is saying, to be able to, because the rates right now are very low. However, the building costs are skyrocketing. So what's the time frame to try to get that lower rate?
Well, the timeline for the project, from my understanding, is to approve the request and hopefully approve the design phase at this year's town meeting, 2021, do the work, get all of that ready to go, and then in fiscal year 23, do the town meeting vote and the town election to designate it as excluded debt. We would borrow in 2024, and our first debt payment would be in 2025. Now, if that timeline sped up and we were able to request things next year and borrow in 2023, then our first debt payment would be in 2024. But I don't know how feasible that would even be.
And we can't borrow it before everything's
When the
done.
project's ready.
Yeah, okay.
Right, because we can't borrow an amount we're not sure we're going to have. We have to know with a lot of certainty what our total cost is going to be, because you're not allowed to borrow more than you spend. So there's a lot that goes into borrowing, and there's a lot of work in advance that is required to be done. We just can't skip any of those steps.
No, I get it. It's just Chris's question is so valid of if you can get ahead of something. A lot of, even my company, like we do think, obviously you can't do it. So I guess it is what it is.
Yeah. And we don't know what the future is going to be. The rates could go down, in a few years, and we would be looking like we're so smart that we waited. There's really no way to know what could happen.
Really hard trying to predict the future. Really hard.
Sonia,
We just have to take the information we have and make the decision that we can.
Right, because they could go up going forward.
They could. Yeah.
Sonia, do you have more slides?
No, that was it. My last slide is just a question slide.
Just wanted to make sure that you didn't have more stuff and we kept interrupting you. So.
No, that was it. Like I said, short and sweet. If you have any feedback on the presentation itself, though, I'd love to hear it, just so I can improve this.
I think the presentation is very good. One thing that I might add, you had in the first couple of slides, you displayed like the debt that was coming off. Something similar on this slide of the per home basis, like the debt that's coming off I know it's small, but that would be good to show.
Okay.
Well,
I'd argue that I don't care what debt's coming off. This is how much the fire station costs. But that's just me.
The debt that's coming off probably won't hit. I mean, it's also important to remember that there are other projects that will go on between now and 2025
yes.
that we'll be borrowing for. So be very limited that from what Sonia's saying, those payments are.
Yeah, assuming those new projects are debt excluded, yeah, that's right. Can I clarify your comment, Matt? Are you, you're saying to have the net impact of the fire station? So the cost of the fire station minus what's coming off?
So if you go back to slide, I think it's slide 3. Like, so the other debt, the dark gray, if you
Yep.
kind of did like showed like that, the debt that's coming off over the
Okay.
next several years. Obviously, it's not going to be
For the homeowner.
a major
Right.
impact, but you showed it on the per homeowner basis.
Okay, I'm following you now. Okay, yep.
And Chris, I do agree. I just think to provide the most and best information for each of the homeowners, that there may be some that are looking for that.
Yeah, I think I almost want to see it as a separate slide, right? So I like Chris.
Yeah.
You want,
Correct,
you
yes.
want to the point, here's what the fire station costs. And then maybe as kind of, you know, sugar in the medicine, you know, showing the other pilot you mentioned, Matt.
Yep.
Okay, I like that idea.
Does anyone have other questions specifically for Sonia?
No,
So Matt, I'm not sure if I can jump in on this unless any of the members do. Before we get into the regular thing, Sonia, thank you for this. This is obviously an extremely important piece that everybody in town has to see, and we're fully aware of it. We want to be honest and upfront and transparent with it. We'll get more into the actual station and like that. And I'm going to defer to Derek and Jared in KB in a few minutes, but we're looking to see if there's any way we can reduce that number. We don't know if we can, and we'll get into that in the future. So, you know, this could change somewhat. That's a longer discussion we're going to have in a few minutes, I think, after Sonia. I don't want to hold her up, but I just wanted to thank you, Sonia, again for this. I know you've been a lot of help on this, and people do have to know, and we're fully aware. This is a tough, tough act to follow after Sonia giving this, because we're all residents here as well, and we're fully cognizant of what we are asking of the residents, or proposing that, you know, the issues that we're having here. Which we can get into in a minute, but I just want to thank you.
Very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Sonia.
Thank you very much, Sonia.
John, I wanted to ask, so I had talked with Derek real quickly at our meeting at the fire station, and he had said there is a video that was put together through cable with so that residents can see actually, you know, what it looks like right now at the fire stations. And I'm wondering if there is a way to better get that out to the public, whether it's through sharing the link on some of the Facebook pages or Twitter pages, so that people can actually get a visual of the issues and, you know, why this is so needed. Is that something that you can work on with the cable station or whomever to kind of, because I like to think sometimes that I'm pretty plugged in, and I was completely unaware that there was a room by room video out there of the fire stations.
There is, Barbara, and thank you for bringing that up. We spoke the other day. I did ask Derek to share that link, I think, in some of the social media pages in Abington. He was going through just editing that just to see if he can shorten it, because it's somewhat lengthy. And I'm going to let Derek speak on that more, because I know he's been working on that. But I agree with 100%. We're trying to get that information out there as well. I think everybody's attention span in general in society is very short bits right now. And that video that we put together with Abington Cable, room by room at both stations, it does get lengthy because there is a lot to see. But we do want to get it out there. That it has been shared on our thing, but not everybody's seeing it. Derek, do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, thanks. Kevin Tachi and Abington Cam crew came to the station. They did a room by room video tour of the whole station, similar to what we did with you guys over the weekend. And that is something that we're going to get shared out there. I'm hoping by tomorrow morning we can start getting the links out there so everybody can see it on social media. As far as I'm aware, it's been being broadcasted on the Abington Cam channel, but it's probably more easily seen by everybody if it goes out onto social media. So we can get that out there. I'm hoping by tomorrow.
I do feel like there's a huge value in the community being able to actually see, because not everyone is stopping into the fire department, I hope, and certainly not during the pandemic. So I feel like a picture is worth 1,000 words to be able to really see the needs.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to thank everybody that joined us on Saturday, from this board and a couple of selectmen as well going through that. That took longer than we thought. We tried to move that along, but there's a lot to see as you all, those that were in attendance could see that. And thank you again for giving up several hours of a beautiful weather on a Saturday for that. And I hope that we answered a lot of your questions. And I think we heard your message as well. And we do get it. We don't like the overall cost of what this is. And we spent a lot of time on it, and it kind of is what it is. We can explain that more on here too. And since then, we had a couple of meetings amongst ourselves and with Scott and with KBA, who I believe is on here, to see in the short term on this article, to see if there's a way we could maybe alter that, as well as, is there any way to at that stage where this may go with the fire station at Well. I'd like to hand this over to Derek, because I know he spent a lot of time in preparation on this.
Thanks, Chief. Like the Chief said, thank you very much for coming out over the weekend to check out the station. Once we finished the feasibility study, it's been about a year, a little over a year maybe, the study was completed, and the Fire Station Building Committee's task was to go through it and make the recommendations to the town on what we wanted to do. Out of the options that were inside the study, we decided on the building layout, the potential building layout and plan that was roughly around the $30 million mark. We voted on agreeing with the study that a new station was needed, and then we made a decision on the location based off what the study showed. When we passed that off, that's right when the pandemic started, and I kind of put a slowdown on everything. So we weren't able to have a lot of people come to the station to look at it. There wasn't a lot of talk about it at the time. But the reason that this article is the way it is once we passed it off to the town and having conversations with the town manager and the chief and myself, we thought going for the full amount of the fire station wouldn't be in the best interest of the town at the time, and thought that if we could do this initial warrant article to get the complete plans, renders, and engineering completed, we'd be able to present to the town an exact figure of what we need to be done instead of just a ballpark of what the study showed. Because we could come to the town and ask for the full amount now, but you could see from Sonia's PowerPoint that would be that effect that would hit sooner rather than later. And there may be pros and cons to that, but that's how we came to this this particular warrant article. And like the chief said, after our tour, we definitely listened to what you had to say, and we hear you. We know that this is a lot to ask for, especially even just in this warrant article. But we reached out to KBA and we worked with Sean and Todd that are on with us now on possible different ways we can go about this. But like Sonia said, and some of your questions got brought up, the longer that we push this off, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. The cost of the building could increase, it could decrease. Rates for borrowing could increase or decrease. So there's really no way to know what's going to happen in the future. But we definitely heard what you said, and if we need to, we can make some changes to this warrant article that might make more sense, but it might push off the project even longer. And I have the ability to answer plenty of questions when it comes to any of those options, and we have kind of a layout that we could give to you. But we also have KBA on to answer any of the specific questions about what this article would entail.
So I think that would be the good first or right now step is for the amount that we're looking for in this particular article, which is now Article 12 for the annual town meeting. What exactly is being done?
So for this particular warrant article, this would include the schematic design, design development, pre-qualifications, construction documents, bidding, construction administration costs, and closeout. This essentially gets us all the way to putting a shovel in the ground. Everything will be done and ready to go at the next, or whatever the next town meeting that we would vote for the remaining amount of the full fire station. As soon as that second amount would be approved, we could start construction right away and not delay any more time. This would get us right to that point. There's a lot of factors in this article that can be cut back, but that just all those steps that we take off of this still need to still have to get done one way or the other before a building can start to be built.
Can we get a little bit more in detail on the $3.5 million from KBA?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry. Thank you, guys. I'm Sean Schmiegel from KBA. I'm the associate principal. Todd Costa's on as well. He's the principal in charge. So the $3.5 million, I think part of that, I'm looking at my other screen here, sorry, so I'm not ignoring you, but part of that number, so basically the entire $3.5 million would include what Derek just commented on, schematic design all the way through closeout. So that's actually all through construction. It actually gets us beyond ready for shovel in the ground. It gets us through construction. So the construction administration, the closeout, and the bidding is all obviously right prior to shovel in the ground. And additional funding is also necessary for owner's project manager, an OPM. So what that is any project that is publicly procured in the state of Massachusetts over $1.5 million, you need to hire an owner's project manager. So that extra fund of about $1 million would procure that company, whomever that company may be. So it's advertised, and what that is it's the town's representative to help the process, keep us in line, keep you in line, and kind of help with the scheduling process. So that $3.5 million really gets you through all construction. So depending on, it's kind of the comment that Derek made about getting shovel ready, that's right prior to bidding, which is construction documentation. So schematic design development, and construction documents is a certain percentage built into an architectural engineering fee. So it's not that full amount of $3.5 million. It would be reduced. So I think I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but I think the question or the bottom line is, to what extent or to what level of the schedule is the committee and the town most comfortable with? So as Derek alluded to, the feasibility study we went through 3 or 4 different site options. We went through 4 or 5 different plan options. We came to a site that was most progressive. We came with a plan that was a little bit conservative, but by entering into a schematic design phase, That's really the opportunity where ourselves, our engineers, the building committee, and the town manager, everyone really starts working together and getting into a more detailed analysis and really right size the building, right size the program, and right size the budget. Obviously, we don't know the future, what it's going to tell us regarding the economy, the bonding rates and everything. So as we all know right now, maybe not, we don't all know right now, but construction costs are increasing just due to the way the economy is. So, you know, other communities, we're kind of in the same scenario with where you are with town of Abington. So, you know, some communities are pressing ahead, going forward, asking for all the money right now to grab that bonding rate because they feel that's it's their best shot. Some communities are slowing down and just going through what we call design development, which is about 60% of what the documentation would be necessary to get you into bid. But what that does is it, like I said before, it right sizes the building, gets our engineers involved heavily, gets some schematic, gets some more design development involved into the engineering. There's more site investigation involved. More information is presented not only to us, but then we're able to get a better hold on the estimate with less contingencies. So it's a much more realistic, if you will, construction number, construction budget. So I think it's just a comfort level of the community here, and really understanding and wanting to understand what the overall budget comfort level would be, and really just moving forward from that point. Hopefully that kind of clear things up, sum up. I mean, it's a little confused, maybe not confusing, but if you want me to dive more into some of each phase, I can, but that kind of is a brief summary of everything.
Yeah, I think what would be nice is if we had this 3.5 million number.
So you have to speak up. We can't.
Can't hear me?
Not really.
That's better, Joe.
Let me get a little closer to my mic.
Sorry.
That's fine. I guess my thought was I'd like to see the 3.5 million broken out, right? So like, and I think one of the phrases you used was closeout, right? I don't know what that is, and I don't know what that would cost. So being able to see what comprises it, and I'm not sure what level makes the most sense. Maybe it's just that high level that both you and Derek gave. Maybe there's worth going one level deeper just so we can see it, so we can rather than just having this nebulous number of 3.5 million.
Yep.
I don't know if that's possible.
So if what I'll do, Derek, I can just share quickly what I sent you earlier. So if I can share my screen, that's possible.
Hold on a second. Let me stop my share.
Bear with me a second. So is everyone able to see my screen as of right now?
Yes.
So currently, the current town warrant, 3.5 million. So the architectural and engineering services through construction and occupancy. So that is design starting tomorrow, getting us all the way through bidding and construction administration. So looking into schematic design, it's roughly about $350,000. So that gets us into, like I just said a little bit earlier, working more heavily with the building committee, the town, getting into more of the design, really honing in the details, creating the efficiencies, getting into the design a little bit more, engaging our consultants, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, civil engineering, engaging them a little bit more, getting more detail. Then the next level of design development. So what that is again, gets us farther into more detail, gets us through more development, more engineering, and really get, as I said earlier, about 60% of the design. And then going through that process, there's a process called pre-qualifications. So with a project of this size, in the state of Massachusetts, you have to pre-qualify general contractors and what's called file sub bid contractors. So all of the general contractors, subcontractors need to be pre-qualified. So it's a process that we go through and determine every sub contractor, whether it's roofing, tiling, painting, and then we have to pre-qualify them. So it's a fairly lengthy process. We go through. It's a request for qualifications that's advertised. Get hundreds of documents that come in from all these vendors. You review it, and then you pre-qualify them, and that will allow them to bid on your project. So that's a small phase. And then after while that's happening concurrently, you get into construction documentation. So that's that last piece, which is the final design. So that gets us all through, the last 40% of the documentation. So that gets every finish, every door hardware, security cameras, security hardware, all built into the documentation. And then there's also a round of what's called specifications, the project manual. So it's the front end of the document, which is a lot of the town documentation and a lot of it's called general conditions, which gets into a lot of the legality portions of construction and protection of the town, protection of the architect, and also the contractor. But what that does is, so these first 4 levels gets you shovel ready, if you will. And that's just about 2 million. Sorry. That is
About 2 million, yes.
just a little bit, $2 million. The bidding phase. So those 4 phases get you into bidding. Once you hit bidding, there's a level of, again, you have to advertise it. You go through the bidding process, takes usually about 4 to 6 weeks. Goes through file sub bidding, goes through general contractor bidding. And then at the end of that, you get a number of bids. There's a review process. And then you select the lowest qualified bidder. From that phase, once that's your shovel, that's you're ready to put your shovels in the ground. So during construction administration, contract administration is, the architect, the engineering team works with the town, works with the contractor, and administers the contract, which is the design documents and specifications. So going through that entire process, a project of this size will probably take, a good part of 14 months, maybe for 18 months of construction between at the moment shovel hits the ground to occupancy. So that $450,000 is extended over the course of about 18 months. And then closeout really is just the very last phase, which we call like the punch list phase. So it's really a month or so right prior to the department getting occupancy and moving into the building. So really it's just working with the town, working with the contractor, get all the correct documentation, the closeout documentation, warranties, training exercises, whatever's needed for that last portion of the project. And then the next piece of that $3.5 million. So basically all the A&E services tallies up to about $2.5 million. The next piece is typically about 4% of the construction fee, and that's the OPM services. So as I mentioned earlier, any project over $1.5 million, that the town is required to hire an owner's project manager. So that's the additional $1 million. And that would be hired at schematic design phase and go all the way through construction and closeout. And typically that owner's project manager really gets involved heavily a little bit at pre-qualifications, but real heavily at bidding down into closeout. So they're on site every single day during construction. So they're your eyes and ears, they're our eyes and ears, but it's a requirement to have somebody on board to be doing that. So their fee's a little bit heavier on the back end of this project, whereas the A&E fee is a little bit heavier on the beginning of the project. So that kind of is the quick breakdown. I mean, I can dive into a little bit more if there's questions, but hopefully that clears it up a little bit more.
Yeah. So can you guys hear me better? See my mic? Am I coming across?
Yes,
Okay. All right.
thanks.
So I guess my so is that OPM to the very end of when we are moving in, or is it at the end of this this part that covers the 3.5 million?
So the OPM is hired at schematic design. So basically, you have two consultants. You'll have us, the architect, or you have the architect and engineering services, which will be KBA and all of our consultants. But you will also have an owner's project manager. So yes, you have the building committee, which Derek and the rest of the team is involved. But this owner's project manager is literally the conduit of all those entities. You have the building committee, ourselves, and the town. So they're qualified to handle projects of all scales, but it's an additional consultant that's necessary, or it's required by state law to have on a project of this size, because it's a public procurement process.
Yeah, I think I probably wasn't paying attention enough. So yes, because they're at closeout, and closeout is just before you move in. You know, they are there they are there until the building's finished being built.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Because for some reason I was wondering, I was thinking like this 3.5 million was like we would be done with the 3.5 million and then we would start all the costs for construction. But this OPM is, so constructions happen somewhere in this layout you have here, right? The actual construction.
Construction would start about in here.
Yep. So somewhere in there is where we'd inject the amount of money to build it, and then the OPM is there to the very end.
Correct, and we are as well. So this 3.5 million includes the 2.5 million of us, as well as the $1 million of the OPM. Roughly, these are ballpark estimates, and that is from starting tomorrow all the way till the day Chief Nuttall and everyone sets foot into the building.
Gotcha.
And beyond. So those are the fees to get this project all the way to the end.
Okay. Yep, that makes sense to me. Yeah, I
So-
think that's important. Sorry to cut you off, Barbara. I think this is important.
No.
To kind of see, because rather than just say, yeah, we need 3.5 million, maybe if you spend much time to explain this, we just have this list here to say, okay, that's where the money's going. And it kind of makes me feel a little better, me personally.
John, could I ask a favor? Could you email this to Chief so he can get it to me? So I can have a copy in the notes?
I can get it to you, Deb.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Matt,
Yes, Barbara.
so soup to nuts, beginning to end, the actual construction, all of the, everything, soup to nuts, the total figure to actually build a new fire station is?
So the proposed plan that we submitted was, it was in the feasibility study, there were several options and we chose the lower of the options because of size constraints and other departments being included. This was
Right.
for the fire station. That was, it had a ballpark range. So it went from 28 million to 30 million and change.
Okay.
So it's just the ballpark because the feasibility study doesn't give you any sort of exact figure.
Right, it's
But-
not exact, but I'm looking for the soup to nuts, like the total figure, estimate.
It's still at 30 million because until we do schematic design and design development and the beginning stages of what Sean just said, there's no way for us to really know the actual size, layout, square footage. Everything's just ballparked in the feasibility study.
Okay,
So we have to get to the next step to get those exact figures. So the intent of this article was to kind of bring back the exact figure to go for the next big section. right now, all we have is the feasibility study that just gives us that ballpark range.
So
Right.
Is the 3.5 million part of that 30 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, I was wondering if it's really like, is it really 4 million?
I was going to say
Right.
that too, and I'm not sure in Sonia's spreadsheet, she may have actually added this 3.5 million on top of the 30 as well. I'm going to have to double check with her, but
Mhm.
I'm not sure if she did that, to be honest with you.
Great, thank you.
The other question I have for you, Derek, is we going back talking about trying to get that social media aspect for the stations. Is it going to be pitched in the context of, listen, the reason why we're pushing this out is because we have an upcoming town hall, and we need to make you aware of what the situation is, or is it just, hey, check out the fire station, because it might lose some context there?
It was the intent of the video was really because the pandemic hit right before the feasibility study came out. So it kind of put a stop to really what we could do. So talking with Kevin Tachi and having him come to the station, we were able to find a way to bring the station to the residents since nobody could really come into the building. So we do go room by room and just explain, like, here is, for instance, kind of like the tour we gave you guys this weekend. Here's the boiler room, but this boiler room is also 3 other offices all combined into one little room. And we're trying to like explain that, but it's different when you see it in person as opposed to on the video. But I want to be able to get that out there to try to educate as many people as possible. We've been trying to do that all along, but getting the video out there has been a little bit of a process. Plus, with everything going on with COVID, it's kind of been a difficult task.
Yeah, I think what I was asking though is like when it's shared, right? Whatever verbiage is used around the video, when it say it's a Facebook post, right? I think it should be in the context of, yeah, we did take this, but this is a great time to watch it now, as we all know we're getting ready to think about doing a new fire station, as opposed to just like, hey, here's a tour of the fire station, check it out, because I think the point that we want is people to see what it's like, so that they don't have a question as to why we're going to be moving towards a new fire station.
I agree, Joe, and I think some of the things that may be overlooked if you're not kind of really understanding some of the aspects, like the female police, female fire personnel that are, there's no separate quarters. The issues with the flooding, if you're out on a call and the garage is flooding, all of those things I think are very important to be able to share with the public, and so that the community gets a better understanding of really how dire the situation is.
A lot of the issues we have, and we've gone through it again and again, so I'm going to be very brief. It's not just that we need more room for the trucks and all that. It's the way the buildings are both designed. They're both designed and constructed predating what we now know with the health concerns, the cancer, separation of both the diesel exhaust as well as just our own gear, as we showed everybody the other day. So it's not just, we'll just slap another apparatus floor at headquarters and you're done. It's so far beyond that. It's the living quarters inside. It's the lack of physical space within the structure to add another bathroom, 4 male, female bathrooms, restroom facilities. And it's not as simple as we'll just add something else to it. We're so
exactly that,
So-
and that's my point, John. Like I feel like without actually physically being there, being able to see the space and the explanation of how limited you are in both stations.
The intent in the video is there. So for each section, you'll definitely be able to get the message that there's just not enough space.
So questions going back to the breakdown of the monies in the current warrant article. For something like, for example, the OPM, if the town in fact does not pass the follow-up article for the rest of the project, how much of that actually gets spent? That the construction administration, the what was it, the closeout, like the articles that are sort of the breakdown parts that are sort of going through the whole project.
Yep.
Like, because I know that will be a concern for people with this amount is if we're spending this and that, or if we're authorizing this and then the other step doesn't happen, do we still pay out all of this money? And from the sound of it, it sounded like that might not necessarily be the case.
No, and I'm sure Sean can probably answer a little bit better than I can, but some of these things would be started, but not necessarily completely completed, because they, like the OPM goes from the start to the end.
Right.
Construction administration is when construction starts, but we still would need the remaining amount to actually begin the project itself, as far as I understand it. And Sean can probably answer that a little bit better.
Yeah, so but going through the documents, creating the construction document package, going through the pre-qualifications and getting bidding out there and getting a construction bid in front of the town. You're correct, that, and then getting that town vote, whatever that may be. So getting that number, there's probably, or not probably, it's roughly, sorry. It's okay. It's about $600,000 of that $1 million that still remain through construction and closeout for the OPM. For the architect and engineering, it's about $500,000. You know, so right there, it's a little about 1.1 million savings or unspent fee if the town does not elect to construct the building at that time. So I think, like, again, depending on what level the town either elects to proceed or not proceed, there will be some savings. You know, so the full ask of the 3.5 gets you to the end. If don't get to the end or don't get into construction, obviously there's a unspent fee.
If I can, there's a couple ways of looking at this too, and I'm going to defer to Derek again on this because I know he's put a lot together, but basically the reason we put the full amount on here now is the end goal of trying to not extend this over time, which would ultimately, we believe, increase the cost of the project.
Yep.
We're not trying to rush this through because we want it right away. It's because the sooner, if it's approved, the sooner it's done, the overall cost of the project is going to be lessened because of the increase in the construction costs. And I do hear your concerns on, well, why are we paying for something we may not need? We agree with you. We had a lot of discussions on that as well. And there may be some options on this request for this town meeting that maybe that could be amended. Derek, do you want to explain that one?
Yeah. So like the chief said, the intent of this was to kind of get us pretty much there and then go to the next step. Because we won't need all of the exact funding, so there'll be some residual if this didn't go through. There are options of that list that we can take off now. They still need to be done if we were to move forward, but it would extend the time frame of the project. So we didn't want to rush it, but we also didn't want to push it off so long that we wouldn't know how this is going to go. We at some point, buildings are always going to keep getting more expensive, no matter how this goes. We just didn't want to push it so far ahead that it starts jumping to extreme levels. So there are options that we did put together, working with KBA and talking with Scott, that we could chip away and make this initial ask lower and still move forward to work to get an exact price on the exact design without having the end funding to get us all the way through construction. If we do chip away at this now, it's still stuff that we'd have to do later on, which could potentially push this project out longer. And that was the intent of that. So we do have other options to kind of lower that $3.5 million threshold down for this particular town meeting, so we can at least move forward to get to design and development.
So, and my purpose for asking is, in essence, so you don't necessarily have to do that. Because if like, I know a lot of the concern and a lot of what the feedback has been on this particular article is, well, what if we spend $3.5 million and then we don't approve the whole project? But if it's made clear that it's authorizing $3.5 million, you're not spending all of the $3.5 million if the whole project doesn't move forward. I think that would assuage some of the concern for that. If you're saying you essentially, in the lead up portion of it before the next vote, you're essentially spending $2.4 million, that's at least a little bit more palatable to people.
And that's definitely possible.
And that it's in there, and you have the ability to do all the things that you need to do to get it to the point that you want to get it to, and to not delay the project, but knowing that like 1.1 million of it would be spent after the whole thing is approved, essentially. Does that make sense?
But Scott, could I get a little bit of your input on this? Just because you've done a lot more of these projects, we've done no projects. And just as a third party on this, I'm just curious as to your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I do. I personally prefer the idea where, we're looking to, we need to move forward with this. So whatever it takes to make sure that we get funding to at least get ourselves to the point where we have some a final set of drawings and a plan that we can come back to this board and obviously the town meeting and say, look, this is what we came up with. We understand what the concerns were. We've looked at this, we've pared it down, and we've taken it from the schematic, and now ultimately we know exactly what we need, and this is what it's going to cost. And then, at that point, I think we could go forward here. I think as we discussed, if we, if this committee feels as though we should leave the construction administration and the some of the other things in there for now, then by all means, I would say we go forward with that vote. But I think if it's more palatable to remove that, that's a separate contract and agreement that we're going to get into with KBA at the end anyways, when we do get into construction, and we'll authorize them at that time. We'll know what that fee is ahead of time, and that'll go into the next, when we ask for the construction money. So, I guess my thought is if there's a number for town meeting that we think everybody's more comfortable with, and it's 2 point something million, it's still, as Derek said, at the end of the day, we still have to go through all the other steps. If we do get authorized to go up to 3.5 million, now you're correct, that if that when we come back and say, okay, we've done all these things, we've listened to your concerns, we've pared it down, this is exactly what we need for the space that we have, for our space needs and for our equipment, for our guys, and it's X amount of dollars, and they say no, we won't have spent that money. I think it's really, we're looking to this board to see what you're more comfortable with, because ultimately we feel that town meeting's gonna vote with you. And ultimately, if you're not comfortable with it, then we have a good feeling that the town's not comfortable with it. Now, as the chief said, I went through this process many times, and I was the in-house owner's project manager for the town, for a fire station, a police station, a crematory, indoor pool, a youth center. I mean, there were many projects that we did there. And, most of the time we went in for all in, construction, design, everything at once. We don't want to do that here. We're trying to come in and say, look, we just want to get to a point where we can come back to town meeting with a refined set of plans with everything in. Again, like we said, we'll be coming back to this committee. Obviously with a final product. I think everybody's listening to what everybody's saying here. And we're just trying to address those needs.
Matt,
Yes, Barbara.
so I think it's important for us to convey to the citizens that we're not looking to build the Taj Mahal of fire stations.
Mhm.
So is there something that we're able to put forth to the townspeople to kind of give them an idea of what the structure and being able to see the needs and understand the needs while seeing that, we're looking to meet those needs, but within reason, without a lot of frills and that type of thing.
As far as the feasibility study, Barbara, I can answer is we did a plan design and review. So everything that we came up with throughout the feasibility study that KBA produced is just the space needs of the department as of right now. There are other departments and communities that are going through the same process, and the ones that are the size and scope of what we are doing some similar sized buildings, similar program layouts. So we haven't done anything excessive by any means as far as the feasibility study was done, at least the way the committee interpreted it when it was presented to us. But I know I've had these conversations with KBA before in the past about making sure that we're just presenting the building that we think that the town needs for what we're using it right now.
Is there a way to show that, like in some type of physical document? Is there a way to show that to the citizens?
Well, right now, what all they have is a schematic, sort of the look. This, we know what we need for space, what we need for our number of employees, for our meeting rooms, for our equipment. Now they have to put that together and come up with a design. Throughout that process, as they go through this design, the committee will be meeting quite frequently. Those are committee meetings that are open to the public. The public will have an opportunity to see this develop along the way. We had in our police and fire station design in my last town that we had quite a bit of input as we went through the process, and there were those who who thought that it should just be a box that looked like Walmart. And there's others that felt that, we needed to add some character because this was a building that represents our town. So you will get input. The community has input. I think that this committee is obviously committed to putting out and responding to the concerns that we're hearing. So all along the way, we can make sure that we're putting it out there that, hey, here's where we're at now. This is what it's looking like. This is what it's going. And it's also pretty easy for them to justify why they need the space and why they need, some of these things are requirements that are, governed by regulations, OSHA regulations. There's there's employment regulations. You have both male and female firefighters, and so there's all sorts of things that we have to consider when we're doing this.
Absolutely. So Scott, I completely
Barbara,
agree with you.
Barbara, quick point, and then a quick question that's slightly off of that topic, or not entirely off, but The quick point, as we discussed, and I discussed with Derek in our tour and meeting on Saturday, Derek is working on both sort of a mailer or pamphlet and a presentation to present at town meeting. So a mailer as a quicker version, and then a follow-up as a presentation, as Derek has very intimate knowledge of the feasibility study and all of the details of it. He's going to pull out kind of the relevant and most important information to kind of highlight things like that. So I think that will help. The question I have is the building committee. Who is on that?
So the building committee consists of myself as the chairman, Wendy Happel is the secretary, Jared Driscoll, Jim Dabrowski, and Roger Bodie.
And how did that committee form? And is there who are the people on there? Are they representatives of different boards or committees or the department? Are they outside? Are they're just sort of average citizens on that?
So the committee was formed 2.5 years ago at a Board of Selectmen's meeting. There's 2 members of the fire department and 3 citizens.
So one of the things that I was thinking about in between meetings and stuff was the school building committee was pretty substantial in size. And there were a lot of representatives from different areas, not just different committees in the town. Like we had a representative on that committee. I know the selectmen did, but there were a lot of townspeople, like average townspeople representatives on there. And I feel like that gave the town as a whole a feel that they had more say in the process. So I don't know if that, we do have 3 people on there, which I think is excellent. 3 townspeople. I think it's very important to have proper representation from the fire department as well. But I don't know if maybe we look at a sort of an expansion of that committee or something that might be helpful.
I can answer that. I'm not opposed to that. I think the first committee that was there, the current committee, I should say, that was the feasibility fire station building committee to see, is it feasible to repair the current stations, add on to the current stations, go for a new one, what location? Their task really has been done, and they brought it to this point. And Matt, I hear what you're saying. I tend to agree. From this point forward, assuming that we get this funded, as we're really getting into, honing down the design of the building and into the construction, maybe we should, seek adding a little bit more into that, if that's what you're looking for. I think, I'd certainly want to get the town manager involved in that anyway. Scott, I'm not trying to dump more work on you. I feel like you're doing that, but just because of your experience alone, that is invaluable. And that's not something that we had when this whole process started. So I'm not opposed to that. And I think it's certainly a community building long after I'm gone and most of the members here are gone. So there's definitely, I think, input for the community.
Matt, I agree with you. I think broadening maybe some of making it a little bit larger committee, again, will help to dissuade that idea that we're looking to build the Taj Mahal of fire stations, because that's not what is proposed. You're looking to accommodate the needs for the current department that we have.
We're just trying to build on current standards, whether it's NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, OSHA, the Mass, just the Mass building codes as well, ADA. We don't need any of these right now. And we've been trying to, be honest.
Right. You're trying to meet the very bare,
correct,
bare minimum requirements for a department of your size.
Both of these stations were built prior to the town adopting EMS before ambulances. They were not designed and built with ambulances in mind. They were not designed for different genders in mind. Back then it was just the firefighters, which meant guys, to be honest with you. The world has changed since then. We've got, there's 3 female employees in this department. We have no separate facilities for that. These buildings were built for smaller fire apparatus. They were built prior to any computers or IT or half of the radio infrastructure that we have now. None of this, and just the trucks have grown, so they don't fit as well as when the original building was built. We have more types of trucks. We didn't have ambulances then. We just have more trucks to deal with the massive increased call volume when these were built. So, the buildings were designed for a completely different fire station for a different town back then, back in 1964, 1973. And with the exception of Station 2 for a couple of periods of time, these have been occupied 24 hours a day, nonstop since 1964. I think we are the most used building aside from a residential home. And even then, there's always somebody here. There aren't people going to work, school, or whatnot. Half of the homes are vacant at least a portion of the time. This building has been occupied nonstop since 1964, and it's shown. And we maintain it as best we can, but we've simply outgrown it space-wise and just the way that modern fire stations are designed now to protect us.
Or even, John, the way the world is today is certainly not built to accommodate the issues of a pandemic, certainly not built to accommodate the issues of both female and male firefighters, EMS. When we were there talking about the issues of people, pulling into the fire station because they're not going to make it to whatever the nearest hospital is. These buildings weren't built or prepared to handle any of those situations.
So in an effort to not be on this meeting until tomorrow, what other questions do we have specific to this article? What is now Article 12 on the warrant?
I have a couple. I'm sorry if it takes long. For KBA,
Hello.
how many $30 million buildings for fire have you guys seen, built, been involved in?
Do you want me to take that one?
Oh, yes, Todd, if you're there, yeah.
Sorry. Thank you, Todd Costa, the principal in charge of the project here. $30 million fire stations directly, more frequently now because of the cost of construction and everything else. Trying to remember from the top of my head here. The Hyannis Fire Station we just completed, again, a couple of years ago, so it's a little bit less than the 30, but comparable. Chatham's Fire Station down in Cape Cod. We're working right now with community in Hingham, getting them a new substation and public safety facility. We're also working with Needham and getting them a new headquarters and a new substation. So as far as, as Castle Booze is concerned, we have 2 divisions pretty much within our company. We have K through 12, and then we have public safety, and then I basically manage the public safety side of things, and it's my only focus is police and fire.
And is there an ability to, so you guys, do you guys manage the project, or you're the architects for it?
Mm-hmm. We're the architects for it, so we'll design it right from as the outline that Sean had given, from schematic design all the way through to a closeout. We're around. We've been in business since 1963. We are not going anywhere. We've been in Massachusetts. Our headquarters is in Connecticut, but we've been in Massachusetts for 22 years. We're not going anywhere as far as that is concerned. Yes, we manage the full process, more so the design, and then we are the um, as contract language typically states, we're the interpreter of the drawings. We work with the owner's project manager and the clerk of the works to make sure that the contractor who is hired by the town to build the project from the the drawing set and from the project manual, they don't cut any corners. They adhere to the documentation that is provided to them, and if they do veer from it, we issue all of the notifications um, and letters, if you would, that put them on notice that they have veered away from what they're supposed to be doing as part of the contract documents.
And then you guys came up with this all before COVID, right? Like all of these. So there was a price before COVID for the majority of stuff, which I'm assuming is what you did. Has anything been augmented since? And do you believe that if something was $28 million, you can hit $28 million today? Sorry, not today, in 2 years.
In 2 years, therein lies a little bit of the challenge. Yes, the short answer is yes. If that's the cap that is set, we design to the budget, and we sometimes have to have the hard conversation of, well, this is the number that we're striving for. This is whether it's high or low, and obviously, if we're talking about tough decisions, we're usually talking about an estimate came in higher. What's the way that we're going to value manage? We don't like to call value engineering because we're not trying to remove anything. We're just trying to look at methodologies and construction and materials to get that in alignment. Sometimes the budgets are not able to get aligned via just materials and construction type. Sometimes we are talking about what kind of spaces can we reduce, what kind of spaces can we go without in order to, or make provisions for the future for an addition, should they for an example, we're doing a substation that's out in the community of Acton. We designed into that building for them a expansion of dormitories, so that today their 5 firefighters going to be within that. Their build out of their community says that this station is going to need another 3 or 4 within that department. They don't want to invest that money today for 30, 40 years out. They would rather small addition on in 30 years.
And there's obviously a lot of money that's made here. I'm not saying specifically on your end, but on a $30 million project, there's a lot of money to be made. Who, again, I'm in the private sector, so I don't, I work on a whole different thing, but is there, is it somebody like, do you guys go out and hire a Suffolk Construction, which doesn't do the building, doesn't do it, they just manage it and make sure everything's, or are you guys doing that? That was more of my question.
Okay, so that is the bidding process. We would put this out for advertisement and bid according to Chapter 149 bidding regulations. We will hire a general contractor. Some of those general contractors are folks that work with the tools. Some are not. Some are just that they're managers. They pull in all the right parties and people, and they just basically manage the overall process on the site. We are KBA as architects. We are the enforcer of the documents for the town. So we're watching out for the town's best interest as to what we've gone through all the design process on, and making sure that that's put into the building.
So the last question, I think, for me, if I want the chief to get every single thing he wants in there, but I also want to, just because of my business, I want the town to pay less for this. So who can he go to and say, hey, we have 25 million and this is everything that we want in the $28 million thing? Somebody figure out and make it work. Or is it just the bidding thing is really that's the only thing that happens? And how much ever it really costs at the end, the person for what they pay and what they take in, they just keep the spread, and that's good.
That's ultimately, I mean, there's two methodologies within the state of Massachusetts. There's chapter 149, which is design bid build. And then there's chapter 149A, which is CM at risk. There is a slight premium to having a CM at risk. That is a qualifications hire that you're contracting. You're signing a contract with a contractor. I know that sounds a little convoluted, but that is based on their qualifications and based on their history, but they are part of the team during the design or much earlier. Now, usually a CM at risk type project is a much larger project. It's a bigger school. It's a much more complex project where you are, doing early bid packages, ground amenities, ground improvements. There's a lot more moving parts when you want to bring in a CM at risk. This project, I would say, is probably going to be most beneficial to go design, bid, build, the traditional methodology. I just wanted to kind of jump back to one statement that you made, that there's a lot of money to be made. That you have to realize that with public bidding, we have what's called prevailing wage rate. So the salaries of any contractor that steps foot on that site, or their hourly rate, is established by the state. It's established by Boston, and that's what those contractors have to make.
Got it. Mine's more of like a creative thing. Like, if you could have saved $3 million, I want to give you guys 33% of it.
We'd appreciate that, but
I can.
Unfortunately, there's no incentive.
Being completely serious, like, I can do that with what I do, and I do it every day, and it really works out well. I'm assuming that's like some sort of not legal or whatever. I don't know all the things for it, but that's more of my question. Who's really managing it, and can they squeeze it? I have no issues with saying, hey, for squeezing it, you guys should get paid more.
Unfortunately, the state frowns upon that.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Joe?
Two quick points, just because we're kind of in the meeting, and I think it'd be great people to hear that are watching. But I really understand Barbara's point about the concept of a Taj Mahal, but the problem with that is that a Taj Mahal is subjective. Someone can say, why do you need two separate bathrooms, right? The Taj Mahal. So I wouldn't want to worry about someone thinking we're doing too much when we know full well that this committee is trying to get what we need for the fire department. That was point one. And then point two is, we have a clear picture of the why we need a new fire station, right? I think it'd be hard pressed for anyone to say, nah, you guys are fine. We have this sticker shock that's going to come across, right, for a new fire station that some people will squabble over. And we talked about this on Saturday. I think an important piece of that is, if we don't build the fire station, I don't think that's really even an option, right? We have to build something. But if we don't build the fire station, here is the massive impact to the people, the buildings, what you're gonna have to pay for, all the things that Chief Nuttall talked about was, we're not really in compliance with anything. And if that comes home to roost, what does that mean? So it's kind of like offsetting, like, oh, sure, maybe we could say we don't do the fire station, but if we don't, buckle up, because it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, as we discussed on Saturday, one of the things that I think is important to lay out in the information that is presented at town meeting for this is, if we don't do this, what is the amount of money that we have spent in recent years on building maintenance, and what are the expected areas and monies that we are going to spend in the near future on building maintenance as well.
And just not being compliance.
Yes, and compliance.
It's going to be huge.
Maintenance, compliance, all of those things. And that leaves aside all of the concerns about that we have, and that people who view the video and go to the fire stations will see that we have, about just the concern for the health and safety of our firefighters and our town employees.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%, Joe. And my comments as far as like building the Taj Mahal is I think that residents that aren't familiar with the situation sometimes think that, you know, we're overbuilding and I don't believe that's the case here. And I think finding some way to be able to show how that is not the case, and every inch of space that is being requested is something that is needed, is important to show the townspeople, to be able to have that buy-in.
So I think as the sort of the final point I'll make on this particular part of the topic is, I think the town has a very good history of building very good buildings that are not the Taj Mahal. Building very good buildings. The town hall is a functional building. The town library is an excellent building. The new school is really very nice and is not gaudy in any way. And so I think that we have a good history of building those types of buildings. I think we need to rely on that history and the processes that we've used before to ensure that we do that type of a process, to ensure that that happens again. And for people with concerns, invite them into the process.
Right. And Matt, I just add a couple things.
Yes, please, Chris.
One on the 3.5 million, that chart that Sean showed us, just turning that into a, you know, an easily readable table, I think is absolutely necessary for presentation at this meeting, and your flyer that you talked with Derek about. And add at the bottom of that chart, it's just 2 lines. 2.4 million is spent before the vote, you know, the override vote or whatever you call it, and 1.1, you know, will come off if we decide not to go forward. Just, you know, very succinct, easily understandable, I think. Yeah, nobody's going to understand exactly what each of those steps are, but they're never going to. So that's one thing. And the second thing is in your, you know, in Derek's presentation, I've just been thinking of a table that I've just put together here of, here's what we've got now as far as current buildings, and here's the new building. And the rows are things like number of buildings, age of buildings, annual maintenance cost, average response time, apparatus space. You know, Derek can come up with, you know, 20 things that make it obvious that this new building is necessary. And it just eliminates, you know, I think if you look at those things, the things we saw the other day, I think it just makes it easy for people to understand, oh, that's what they get in there, that's what they get in there. And yeah, that's reasonable, it should have that. And it eliminates some of the concern about the Taj Mahal and do we need a new building and should it be central and all this other stuff. If you just have a nice little chart table, I think that would be good. That's all I have to add.
I lied with the last question. Scott, could you just explain why you've done it previously a different way of the full price and why we're doing it now this way? Is there some sort of benefit, or is it just to sort of ease the community into doing this? Because again, for me, I think you've heard my point of view. I think everybody should know if we vote for $3.5 million, we are definitely building a $30 million or closed building. And for me, I would rather, again, I don't think my brain works like everybody else's, but I would rather that be on there than 3.5 to look at and design a new thing that might happen that's going to, you know, no matter what, make your taxes go up by $40 a year. You know what I mean? And we might not do this anyway.
Well, in the instances that I did that, we had failed at the ballot twice, so 2 years in a row. So we went back and actually did some of the things that you're saying here. We expanded the committee. We got more feedback from the finance committee, more feedback from other stakeholders. And we said, essentially we said, what is the number? What do we think that the number is that they want? And let's design to that and go in for everything. The problem with that is that we did have, our bids came up high. Our bids, they ate up a lot of our contingency. So we did what they didn't like to call value engineering, but that's what we called it, and that's what we did. And so that, ultimately we got everything built. It came out, very proud of both projects that we did that with. On another project though, we followed this method and we went in and we asked, for the design money and to get us up through bidding. And we came in pretty much where we thought we would be, but we had a full design of exactly what we want in bids in hand when we went to the next town meeting. And we didn't have any problems. We didn't have to worry about, we had a full contingency there. And if we had anything that we ran up against, that we weren't expecting, we were in good shape. So I think I think in this case where this is our, especially where we're hearing a lot of feedback that they really want us to work on this and get some more community input. And because of the length of time that it will take to actually get through the point where we're bidding and get to that point with this kind of project, I think this is a good course to go. We won't, it'll take almost up until pretty much next town meeting, which we're going to have on time next year, to get to this point where we actually have the exact price.
Was that a joke, Scott?
No, that was what my intention is, to actually have town meeting on time. For two reasons. One is, well, because I'd like to do it on time and say that we did it. And the other reason is because this, next year, if we do go forward with this and we do come with bids in hands to town meeting next year, and we want to look to borrow upwards of the 28 or whatever $1 million, then we're going to have to put it on a ballot, and we would want to have that ballot after the town meeting vote. So the past two town meetings I've been to have taken place after the ballot. And, I think I just would rather do it, the way we're supposed to do it.
Sounds good to me. I think what holds us up is the state numbers, but.
Yeah, you know what? They don't.
So
we'll be okay.
Yeah.
We'll work that out. I know.
let's leave that conversation aside for the moment. Yes, that will spiral us elsewhere, and it's already 9:30. So any other questions regarding Article 12? Do we have a motion for Article 12?
Motion to approve Article 12.
Second.
Motion from Barbara, second from Russ. Is there any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor of approving Article 12 of the annual town meeting?
Aye.
All those opposed?
There's only 7 now, right? Katie's gone.
Correct. No, Katie. Justin opposed. 6 in favor. All those abstaining?
Justin, you were against. I'm sorry.
Justin was against. Yes.
Thank you.
The motion passes.
Thank you, Matt. Can I ask one thing?
Yes.
Chief and Derek, if you are going to make some sort of PowerPoint presentation, we'll have to get in touch and coordinate that, make sure it works. And historically, I just wanted to let you know, especially if you could tell your committee, someone will stand up and call it a Taj Mahal. The sewer building on Progress Street, which is a square red brick building, was labeled as a Taj Mahal when that went up. So if that was a Taj Mahal, they'll get you too. So don't take offense to it. And Matt will buy me a drink for every time someone mentions it.
And I mean no offense by saying that. You know that, Sean. I absolutely. But I do believe that citizens don't understand maybe don't understand the scope and the needs and the changing world today. And things are very different today than they were 20, 25 years ago, even 10 years ago. And so I think it's easy to assume that without really getting an understanding, which is why I think it's so important to do what we can to get the information out on social media and, you know, allow people the opportunity to be able to see the actual structures that we're talking about and understand what we're looking to build. We're not looking to build a bunch of wasted space.
I agree.
With
Todd,
you
Sean,
know.
just, I'm the town moderator. That's why I'm kind of not voting on anything. I agree with you. And I think the biggest thing with projects like these, and I've been on 3 building committees myself, is education, especially before the meeting, because we're not going to have 2 hours at the meeting for question and answer sessions. So whatever the town, the committee, the residents can do in all sorts of forums, I wish you the best of luck, and we'll see you on May 24th.
Sean, I would be happy to host town meeting at Station 1, and we can bring everybody in there. They can all fight over the one bathroom. I have no problem.
Might be quite effective, Chief.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we'll take all your recommendations and get to work on that.
Thanks for your time, Derek. You
Yes,
put a
thank
lot
you.
of time
Thank
and
you
effort
all.
and very much appreciated.
Thank you all for your time, Chief, Derek, Todd, and Sean. Much appreciated. We definitely appreciate the information. We look forward to seeing you at town meeting as well. I'm going to ask the chief to hang on because there is one more article that we were looking for his opinion on, but I think we can parole the rest of you.
Thank you.
Not the committee.
Thank you.
Right, so that we can let the chief go. Article, and let me get the new number for it. Article
You're talking the land purchase?
30, no, land purchase, we know what the chief's opinion will be on that. Article 35, the citizens petition to remove the fire chief position from civil service.
I did get response from town council on that says that the form of the article will not work because it requires a change or a modification of the charter. So as it is written and as it is proposed, we can't take action on it.
Motion to pass over for discussion purposes? No?
Actually, it doesn't hurt for you guys to make a recommendation, but I am not going to allow discussion on it because it's a charter. It requires a charter change, and so the warrant's not in, or the article's not in proper form. If they want to resubmit it the next town meeting, we can work with them on that and make sure it gets done right.
I think just for the sake of having something there, we can take Barbara's motion.
Motion to pass over.
Second.
Motion to pass over from Barbara, second from Russ. Any discussion? Without any, all those in favor of passing over new Article 35?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. We'll pass over that article that we can't take action on anyway. With that, I will say thank you very much to Chief Nuttall for your time once again. This meeting, the meeting Saturday, the previous meetings that we've had you on, you've put a lot of time and effort into helping keep us informed this budget season, and we very much appreciate all of the time that you've given.
Well, thank you you put a lot more time in this than I have. I'm only a guest on your weekly meeting. So I want to thank you, everybody, and good luck with the rest of your meeting. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. The other articles on, we have our town moderator. I will go to the town moderator relevant articles, which are, which one was it? The renaming, dedicating and renaming of the town buildings and the middle high school.
It's still annual.
Yes, everything is still annual. These are now articles 33 and 34. When we were talking about them last week, they were 37 and 38.
So those are citizens petition articles. And we've got some information back from town council where town meeting has no authority to authorize a building to be renamed or dedicated in anyone's honor. The school committee has the jurisdiction over that decision for school buildings, and the selectman has the jurisdiction to make that decision for any other town-owned building. So it's not the proper procedure to bring it to town meeting. So I have not personally spoken with the citizen who filed the petition, but I know the town manager has. I will be speaking to him. I sent him an email to let him know that, again, we won't be able to take any action on this. It's going to be out of order. Because again, town meeting doesn't have authority to do such a thing. If they wanted to pursue that, they should go to a school committee meeting or go to a selectmen's meeting.
Motion to pass over with an explanation.
Seconds.
Motion from Barbara, second from Joe. Any further discussion?
So I just want to
Chris,
say,
Chris is
Matt,
jumping ahead, trying to vote already.
Yeah. I like the speed we're going in.
I just wanted to say that I motioned to pass over with an explanation, and I would like an explanation to be given why we are choosing to pass over, and explain the procedural issues within our motion.
Okay.
Agreed.
I mean, just so you know how it's going to play out is when it comes up, when these articles come up, I am going to announce that it's out of order and there'll be no motion or no discussions on these articles.
Okay.
What your vote tonight is basically for the record, or in case I get hit by a bus and there's another moderator who makes a different decision. But otherwise, we're good.
And I do agree, Barbara. I think the explanation is necessary because I think if we were voting on the merits of the article, it would not necessarily be just looking to pass over. So
Agreed, absolutely.
So with that discussion,
Wait, excuse me, I just want to say that the way I'm going to put this in the minutes
Mhm.
is I put the vote and then the discussion, and the discussion will say the reason why. Is that?
That's great, Deb.
All right,
Perfect.
thank you.
Any further discussion, questions on this one? Without any, all those in favor of passing over Articles 33 and 34?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Was there, remind me, was there anything else that we needed the town moderator for?
I'll stay to the end, but there is one other article, another petition article. You already did the military leave one earlier, and that will be voted upon.
Yeah.
But the other petition article is
dispatch.
Yes, the petition to direct the selectmen to withdraw from the regional police dispatch agreement. That again is out of order. There is a state law that authorizes, and the Board of Selectmen only have that authority to whether to join or terminate a regional dispatch agreement. And in fact, town council noted that the state legislature just a couple of years ago changed the statute to specifically take out any required consent of town meeting. So town meeting has no say whatsoever in whether or not to join a regional dispatch agreement.
And last week we voted to pass over that one. So we weren't even taking that up tonight, but that's good to know. All right, looking at what we have left, before we jump into the remaining, and just so everyone knows, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 remaining articles that we have not, sorry, 6 remaining articles that we have not provided a recommendation on yet. Before we jump into those, were there any articles that we previously provided recommendations on that anyone wanted to revisit on either the special or annual town meeting? I wanted to get through our guests before we started doing that. Sue, what were you gonna...
Correct me wrong. I think the Sue Moquin told me that I think the dollar amount changed on Article 1 of the special slightly.
Oh, snow and ice removal?
Yeah, by like $5,000.
Yeah, so snow and ice changed a little bit, and we were going to do snow and ice and a couple articles on the special out of stabilization. But because people didn't use our health insurance buffer, so we always plan for people who could enroll if something if they had an incident, where their spouse lost their insurance, and so you have an incident where you're eligible for insurance. And so the articles that we were talking about that we were trying to fund through stabilization are now going to be funded through raise and appropriate or transfer from. So we're going to transfer, I don't know exact article numbers, but stabilization, 21,000 for the green communities, I believe it was. And there was one other article. So the special town meeting articles that said stabilization are going to be from transfer from other available funds, which are going to be healthcare line item from last year.
So we have
to
special.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
So we have special town meeting Article 1, which was from stabilization, which was snow and ice. We had the Bemis drug was not stabilization. Article 3 was water. Article 4, grant. Available funds. Stormwater was available funds, and the green communities grant was, I think I have the newer one up. Sorry.
I think you have the newest one
I was just realizing that I had the newest one up. So it doesn't.
So before that, it was Article 1.
Yep, I think that Article 1, Article 5, and Article 6 were from stabilization previously.
Exactly.
The yellow highlighting that I put on that, on the things I issued today, is just supposed to highlight anything where there was a change or an update. Usually Article 1 was a slight dollar change. The rest of them, we just put in some extra wording so that a resident who read the article would better understand it.
Yep.
So that doesn't change our vote then, correct? We don't have to reconsider them?
Well, that's why I put it to you. On Article 1, the dollar amount changed, so maybe the committee wants to, and then the source of funding changed on the ones you just noted. So I don't know.
I think with the source of funding changing, it's probably wise for us to revote those 3 articles. I think the wording changes to make things more clear. I don't think we need to revote, but I think that the source of funding's changing is definitely worth a quick revote on those. And I think it will be a quick revote because I think not taking money out of stabilization should make all of us pretty happy.
Yeah. Or you have to do this 2 ways. You have to, 1, do the vote to reconsider and then do the second vote.
Yep, correct. So what I would look for personally would be a motion to reconsider special town meeting warrant articles 1, 5, and 6.
So motioned.
Motioned by Barbara, and I think I heard Justin second it. Oh no, it was Joe. Sorry.
Oh no, it was Justin.
Oh no.
That's me.
Does anyone want to second it?
Second.
And Russ seconds it. Any discussion on reopening 1, 5, and 7 of the special? Without any, all those in favor of reopening those articles?
Reconsider, just so
reconsidering those articles.
so you know when the minutes come out.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. And I have to adjust quickly for a second. I apologize. My second monitor where I'm viewing things is television, and then it told me it was going to shut off because it's been idle. Okay, so that was a unanimous vote. So all opposed, all abstaining, vote is unanimous to reconsider. So special town meeting, Article 1 is snow and ice removal, transferring from available funds $389,210. Are there any motions for special town meeting Article 1?
Motion to approve or recommend?
Second.
Move a second from Barbara. Any discussion? All those in favor of recommending Article 1?
Aye.
All those opposed, abstaining, it is unanimous. Thank you very much. Is there a motion regarding special town meeting Article 5, which is to see if the town will transfer from available funds $175,000 to implement and install stormwater management improvements, etc.
Motion to approve. Oh, go ahead, give it to Justin.
Motion to approve from Justin,
Second.
second from Barbara. Is there any discussion?
Just say thank you for the document sent out. over
Yes,
the
Sue,
past
thank
week.
you very much. That document was excellent. Laying out the schedule of the stormwater payments over several years into the future. Any other discussion? Without any, all those in favor of recommending Article 5 of the special town meeting?
Aye.
All those opposed, abstaining, it is unanimous. Thank you very much. Now, special town meeting Article 6 is transferring from available funds the sum of $21,135 to supplement a Green Communities grant to fund energy efficiency in town buildings. Is there any
motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Sorry.
Motion from Justin and a second from Barbara. Discussion on Article 6.
Yeah, what, this is for a grant, but what, we're putting up 21 grand. How much are we trying to get or getting?
I believe Scott or Sue, correct me, it was around 200,000.
That's correct. It's $200,000 and we put up 21,000. So it's $221,000 for the whole program, but the grant is going to give us 200,000.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? Without any, all those in favor of recommending Article 6 of the special town meeting warrant?
Aye.
All those opposed, abstaining, it is unanimous. Are there any articles on the annual town meeting that we need to reconsider that we voted on previously?
And if I could mention the yellow highlighted version of the special town meeting warrant and the annual town meeting warrant, I emailed it out to all of you just after 6 o'clock tonight. If for some reason it didn't get to you, please let me or Matt know and we'll get it to you.
Thank you very much for that, Sean, by the way. I'll switch us over to the annual town meeting warrant now. And I will scroll up. All right. Without anyone looking to reconsider articles that we have already addressed, the additional articles that we need to look at and provide recommendations for just to do a quick rundown, we have Article 1, which is the budget, Article 2, which used to be 3, which is the capital plan. We have, let's see, I got to get the new numbers.
Can I point something out on Article 2?
Yes.
So Rainey from the golf course sent Scott and I an email later this evening that that's not what his capital requests are. He does have the funding for what he's looking at. So I'm going to be getting together with him tomorrow to see what I may have put in there inadvertently that they weren't requesting and what they really wanted. But either way, it's still through their enterprise fund budget and they have the money for it. So that might change a little bit.
Is anyone on the committee concerned that the golf capital items that will come from the golf earnings enterprise account will change slightly?
No.
Russ emphatically says no. I agree.
Nope.
I agree with Russ.
It's a well-run organization.
Yeah, it'll definitely be funded by their enterprise fund money.
Yep.
I'm with you both.
We'll have it all wrapped up by Monday night when we bring it to the selectmen.
We appreciate that.
I hope.
And we appreciate how well that department is run as well. Sorry, I'm just getting my article numbers.
Just so you know what we did, I had a meeting today with the town manager, the assistant town manager, and the town clerk, and we went through all of the warrant articles. And we decided with the annual town meeting warrant, we organized it so hopefully things might flow a little more smoothly in certain regards. So if you notice, what I sent you today was that updated warrant. I also sent you a separate document, which is a chart that shows you what number article it used to be and what number article it is now. But if you could scroll up a second to the start of the consent agenda. I think you might recall we started using the consent agenda about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yep.
Where we put together articles which are usually annually voted repetitively, or which are pretty self-explanatory and usually don't get much debate. So that's what we did here with Articles 3 through 10. If anyone wants to pull one out and vote separately, they can do that. But otherwise, we ask the voters, and Matt, as the chairman, will kind of review them very quickly as to what they are. And then we would take theoretically one vote on those Articles 3 through 10 to just kind of keep things moving. You'll also note that we added a title to each article, so it might be easier for people to kind of recognize what they are, or if we were to refer to an article. And that's about it. The 2 marijuana articles towards the end, in the original order, the first article was amending section 24.3 and the next one was doing 24.1. We just switched it so they were numerically kind of following the bylaw. And we also put all the zoning bylaw amendments together, because I'll be stepping down as I typically do. And Mike Franey, former moderator Mike Franey, will be acting as the deputy at this May 24th meeting.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that. So for the committee, the articles that we have remaining to provide recommendations on, Article 1, which is the budget, Article 2, which is the capital plan, Article 9, which is the revolving fund for stormwater, Article 13, which is to buy the land on Bedford Street for the fire station, Article 15, which is the engineering for the town hall and library roofs and windows and doors, and Article 17, which is collective bargaining agreements. So with that said, moving on to the budget, I sent out to everyone today the latest budget that Sue and Scott provided us earlier, which is a balanced budget, which we love to see.
But the balanced budget, and we did not use any stabilization.
Exactly. It's
a home run, right?
Very, very happy finance committee chairman at this moment.
Thought you might like that. That was thanks to Sue and her diligence.
That's excellent work, Sue. Excellent work. Does anyone have any discussion on where we stand on the budget?
Yeah, just quickly, I do, one of the things I was going to ask was stabilization, but if it's, I don't know what level it's at, but if it's the same as we started, ended last year, that's good. That eliminates that question. Thank you. And the second thing is, I just, as I've mentioned before, I'm a little concerned that we just automatically assume the 2.5% increase in the rate every year. Since the 7 years that I've been in town, the budget's gone up by 50% total. And that's, roughly 7% a year. And, we spent a lot of time talking about the fire department, the fire station, which adds about 7% to my, to everyone's tax bill. So, we just be aware that we're adding that every year to the budget. It seems like a lot to me. When I look at this year's budget, as we went through the meetings, everyone had valid reasons for most of the things. We could argue about some departments that have gone up, 50% in the last 2 years or 100% in a couple of departments. But they had reasons, and standalone, they make sense. But overall, a $20 million increase in a $40 million budget over 7 years seems like a lot of money. That's all I got. It's just, this year's budget compared to last year looks reasonable. So.
I agree, Chris.
And by the way, the number of people in the town has only gone up by 3%. So.
Any further discussion regarding the budget? Without any, all those, do we have a motion? I started the discussion without a motion. I apologize for that. Breach in decorum.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to recommend. Barbara, second from Russ. Is there any further discussion? Without any, all those in favor of recommending Article 1?
Aye.
All those opposed? Chris is opposed. It is a 6-1 vote. All those abstaining? The motion passes. Thank you all, and thank you to Scott and Sue and to all of the departments for all of the hard work in putting that together this year.
Thank you for all your hard work. We're starting earlier next year.
Matt, I didn't want to continue to keep this here forever, but like Chris just brought up a great point. Does anyone have any insight to that?
To
how the budget's gone up so much?
My first year.
No, I know. I know, Scott. So trust me, I'm not putting you on the spot here, but like he really does bring up a great point. I mean,
I think if we look at some of the trends, and if we look at where we were at back then compared to where we are now and the economy itself, that might have some answers. I don't know. I don't think it's all the answers. I absolutely see Chris's point. But we were also coming back from some pretty drastic cuts back in
2008,
09,
2009, I would guess.
10,
2010.
yeah,
Yeah.
09, 10,
Building
even
the police
11
station up.
were not great years.
We saw that in other towns too. It was the same thing. I mean, everybody in 09, in 2008, 2010, there were many towns had layoffs. They had to cut back. They cut in services. I don't know, what you had to go through here, but I do know that the police department wasn't at full staff last year. The fire department, I don't believe was, and town hall certainly is, you don't have a lot of the professional, like you don't have an HR director, which I keep saying that'd be kind of awesome. And DPW has been very short-staffed. So, they're managing to keep up the services to a certain extent, but it's not the full service that the town should be getting. So
in 09 and in 09 and 10, right around there, we had completely defunded Park and Rec. We had essentially closed down the senior center with just very minimal maintenance for the building. We were really at bare minimum, very bare minimum. So I do think some of the increases that you're seeing in percentages have to do with crawling back from those times.
So I think some of it has to do with crawling back from those times. I think some of it has to do with we built a big new school, and that has brought students back that were previously going to either the VOTEC or to private schools. And we have had to fill up more so the school department to fill the needs of that. But I think, to Chris's point, some of it is kind of the compounding of the 2.5%, where it's not like 2.5% is each year is on the larger number. So it's not like if you do that for 5 years, you're not up 10%, you're up well above 10% over what it was 4 years prior. So
hence the proposition 2.5.
Yes. It's a good thing it's there.
So
Yeah, proposition 2.5 doesn't say you have to do 2.5.
it limits you.
Agreed. Agreed.
It isn't an attack on anybody or
Nope.
It's just
No, it is a very good point. Yes.
And a concern. That's all.
We all want the town's services and staffing to be as robust as possible, and the town's budget to be as frugal as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, right? But then you look at the capital plan that's going out, and some of the feedback I heard is like, wow, I mean, I'm surprised that there's that much in the queue, right? And so you got something fundamental like roads, right? How are we, how can we come back from a point where we have enough funding to effectively pave the roads as we need them? It feels like, based on the conversation we've had, that's not likely to happen anytime soon.
And as we've discussed, the current plan is to do bits each year as warrant articles.
Yeah.
Like we're doing Hancock and Lincoln this year and such, to try to get back to a point where we're Joe living on Hancock is definitely in favor of that.
Yeah, still always a game of catch up though.
Yes.
When you're talking about the highway department, DPW.
Yeah.
Because they have been so barely, scarcely funded for so long that we are playing a game of catch up.
So it's 10:07 and Joe mentioned the capital plan, so I'm going to move us on to Article 2, which is the capital plan.
I have to make a comment on the capital plan is, so as we discussed, I mean, the things that are missing from the capital plan are, anything that we normally would do with free cash because we don't have free cash. And as we said, we have a balanced budget. We're not using stabilization, and we did not account for the 800,000 plus or minus of the opera money, the American Recovery Plan money that is coming any day now, because we still don't have direction on how to use it. We know it's coming. We know we can use it. We know we can use it for revenue replacement. So my thought and ultimately the plan will be, and it may require a special town meeting, although I hope it doesn't, that when that money comes in, we'll use that to do
cruisers and things like that.
Yeah, so we need the cruisers. We need the street sweeper. At a minimum, we need to do those things. Maybe the bucket truck for DPW. There were no asks from fire, but the street sweeper is, because of that MS4 that we're dealing with, there will be requirements that we're going to need that. So that is my intention. I hope we could do it without without a special, but I doubt it. So there may be a requirement to deal with that in the fall.
So with that being out in the fall, do we have a motion regarding the capital plan, Article 2, on the annual town meeting?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Barbara, second from Russ. Is there any further discussion regarding the capital plan as it stands? Without any, all those in favor of recommending Article 2?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining, it is unanimous. Article 2 is approved. Thank you very much. The next article is Article 9. Let me scroll down to that. The revolving fund for the stormwater. The new revolving fund, and the question that we had as of last week that prevented us from voting on this was what the spending limit was. The spending limit has been added in at 50,000. Thank you for that, Sue. Do we have any?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve from Barbara, seconded by Justin. Do we have any discussion on Article 9? Without any, all those in favor of approving Article 9?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining, it is unanimous. Thank you again. The next article we need to move on is Article 13, which is purchasing the land off Bedford Street for the site for the potential fire station. Do we have a motion for Article 13?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Do we have any discussion?
Real quick, because I missed it. Who are we buying it from?
There's a gentleman, their family has owned it forever. The mother, Sean, what was the name again?
Her name was Mabel Butler.
Butler. She's since passed away, left it down. They really just tired of paying taxes on it. There's no use to the property to them. It abuts, you can access it from the flagpole on Glenowitz. It abuts a strip of land that's owned by the state and by the housing authority. It has one side of it's got conservation. One side of it has that condominium complex off of Thayer Street and then Lowe's. So it's really only useful to that group of people, or anybody who thinks they want to buy it because they know we want it. That would be the other option. It is actually a great purchase for the town. Obviously, it's 6+ acres. It's great. It's a great price, and it's even if we didn't do a fire station there, it's just because of the campus location and where we are, we'd be, it'd be a shame not to take this piece of property.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moderator, did you have something to add?
Yeah, two things. It doesn't say it in the article, but just so the finance committee is aware, it's about 6 acres of land for $130,000. And I believe Scott or Sue can correct me that it is going to be paid by transferring from available funds. All right. If it's approved.
And I think we wanted it to say for municipal purposes. Do we?
Yeah, but in the motion,
yeah.
If the town does approve it, you usually put a purpose in there. It's not for school purposes or fire purposes. It's for municipal purposes. So that, I think, leaves the town some leeway what to do with it in the future.
A nice town manager, Taj Mahal.
Nice buzzword.
Colleges usually have the president's house on campus. Could have the town manager's house.
This is, Scott, I just want to kind of give you guys a heads up too on this one. No matter what happens in Article 2 regarding the funding of the planning and design for the fire station, this article still stands on its own. So hypothetically, if the funding for the fire station design doesn't pass, you still need to make a recommendation on this purchase. And if it does pass, you definitely got to make a recommendation on this purchase.
Correct. Any further discussion? Justin.
Could we pass over it until we know whether or not that article passes?
I think it's after it, right? And
It is after the fire article is, I believe it's 12.
It is
the one right before this. So it will be hot on the heels of that article.
Justin, I had thought the same thing, like unless we're going to use it for a certain purpose, but I do see the benefit in owning the property because we have had a study done that tells us that that is the best location, regardless of when we build a fire station, that is the best location. And we would need that piece of property for access roads. So regardless of when that happens, I feel like this piece of property is an asset to the town, and I'd prefer to buy it from the current owners than to have somebody else purchase it now and know that we're in need and jack up the price.
And it is a great price.
And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but in previous discussion, we did say it is 6+ acres. So it wouldn't be, even if we do build a fire station on it, the fire station will not take up the entire property. So there could be other town uses for that portion of land, even with the fire station. And without it, it is land that's right near our schools, and our town hall and library. So there could be fields,
another dog park,
fields or other purposes that could be used for.
There will be, and I think we could probably we can have a slide up at town meeting that actually shows the locus for it, and I think that might be helpful.
I think that would be very helpful.
Any further discussion?
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
The second was from Chris. Without any further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to recommend Article 13?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstaining? It is unanimous. The next article is, and I'm scrolling on the wrong window, Article 15 for planning for building updates of the town offices and the public library.
Yeah, I don't know when I'm going to have that number. This is just for the engineering. We're not doing any, again, we're just doing designing, estimating, engineering and planning, but I just, it could be a week or more before I have that number. It will be before town meeting.
I'd like to hold off until, even if it's like our meeting prior to
Our
town
meeting
meeting, until
prior
we have
to-
a number.
Yep, I agree. I think that's the wiser choice. Do we have a ballpark, Scott, of what that's going to be?
I think the original guesstimate that we had was what we had in there 1.3. So my guess is it's going to be somewhere around maybe 80,000.
And as you see, we put in, or I put in, a sum of money as
Yes.
the frame instead of a dollar amount. That's legal. In Abington, we have a tradition of trying to put in dollar amounts whenever we have the money, the knowledge or the information available. But the purpose of the article is just to notify people of the subject matter, the motion at the meeting. We'll give the detail of it.
Okay.
We try to put as much detail in the warrant when we can, but in this case, I think 1 out of 37 articles, we have to go to print before we'll have that final number.
And I'm just guessing a high percentage. I mean, it could come in significantly lower, especially if the engineer looks and says, you know what, yeah, the town hall roof doesn't need, we don't have to design for full replacement. The windows aren't as bad, or the design for the windows isn't as complicated. It could be significantly lower than that. So, 80's on the high end, and maybe it's somewhere around 45 or 50. I will have a good number for you within a couple weeks, though.
So I think Barbara's right. I think it behooves us to vote that at our meeting before town meeting and not recommend without a number there. Does everyone agree, or does anyone want to put a motion up and vote on it right now?
Yes, I agree. Sweet.
I see nodding in agreement. So the last article for tonight that we have not made a motion on is funding of collective bargaining agreements, or as it states here, funding of union contracts.
Yeah, we just don't have all the numbers yet. We haven't settled with everybody. So I think that you may be doing that outside.
Yep, and that's one that we typically provide our recommendation on right before town meeting, because we typically don't have agreements right up until the deadline. So
I'm comfortable with waiting until we have a number.
Yeah, me too.
Anybody know otherwise?
And your motion may be that you're funding only 1 out of these 3 or 2 out of these 3. We don't know yet.
Yeah, it could very well be.
Yeah. And Matt, did the finance committee vote on Article 18's dollar amount from the social vocational? Did you guys vote on the $10 million figure?
We did vote on the $10.5 million. Yes, we had that information before our meeting last week. So we did vote on that.
I'll have to check with, I'll have to check with Marty Golightly about if you guys need a meeting space before the town meeting. We're trying to confirm what health protocols we're going to have in place. I can tell you, and just if I could use the time while we're on television, masks will again be required. We'll essentially be following the same protocols during check-in. The only noticeable difference will be, instead of skipping 2 rows between rows that are being used, we're going to skip 1 row between rows that are being used. And again, everyone will be wearing a mask throughout the meeting.
Sounds good. Does anyone have any further points of discussion, any articles that they want to revisit, anything else?
Can we just go back through all of them one by one, please?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Kidding.
So you won't be here next week.
Can I just say again, thank you to all the members of the Finance Committee, those of you who are online now and those of you who are not online. I think a lot of people watch these meetings and they learn a lot. but I also think they've learned to appreciate the amount of time that you guys put into this. And it's not only these once a week meetings, but as you guys alluded to, you were touring the fire station this Saturday, and you tour all the other buildings, and you have liaisons with all the other committees. So the amount of work you do is very much appreciated and noticed, and I can't thank you enough. And if anyone doesn't know, every single one of them is a volunteer. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. I hope that we ask
you,
the
Sean.
questions that the citizens would ask, and I hope that we are able to give the information that people are looking for.
Agreed.
That's the feedback I get, is that you guys ask the questions that people are yelling at their televisions. So it works.
Aaron
And,
Greg does.
yeah, they're good. And it helps because I sincerely feel that we walk into a town meeting with the majority of people there with a great working knowledge because they watch some of these meetings, and it goes a long way, and we appreciate it.
I hope so. Thank you, Sean.
Yes, thank you. Glad to hear that. All right. So that takes us through the first half of our agenda. The second half, thankfully, is not actually a half. Are there any liaison reports? I see head shaken, no. Deb, was there any correspondence?
Nope.
No correspondence. We do have meeting minutes to review that were expertly prepared for us by Deb. They they provided great detail from our lengthy but not as lengthy as tonight meeting last week. Did anyone I believe everyone should have had a chance to review the minutes. Are there any comments, questions, motions, etc.?
I feel that it was almost as lengthy, and I'm going to motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Second. Very well done.
Motion to approve from Barbara, a second from Russ with yet another compliment for Deb's work. Any discussion? Without any, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes from last week?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining? That's Joe abstaining since he was not at that meeting. And that brings us to our next meeting. Our next meeting will be 1 hour prior to town meeting at the somewhere around the middle high school, either outside or somewhere in a classroom. Non-COVID times we're in a classroom. Last year we were outside in the eating area outside of the cafeteria or the high school cafeteria. We will, as we just recently stated, we will take up once again articles 12 and 20 to provide recommendations for those. We will have all of our recommendations printed along with the warrant. I will work on that with Mr. Moderator Sean Riley and various other folks. We'll go through all of that. So we will not see you again until town meeting night.
Before you leave, Matt and Sean.
You're so close, Scott. So close.
Everybody else, I just need you two and Sue.
Yep.
Tuesday, 11-ish. Greg is available for a motions meeting.
This next Tuesday.
Yeah.
I will check my calendar.
It'll be Tuesday the 11th.
Correct.
What time do you say? 11?
I don't have enough. I believe we decided 11, 10 or 11 work for either of you.
It does.
Okay. Matt, you think you can swing it?
I have let's see what I can get somebody to cover that meeting. So yeah, Tuesday at 11 I can do. I will have a hard stop at 12:15 though.
Okay. I think we went through it in about an hour today, didn't we, Sean? So
yeah, and I think there's not a lot on the legal end of it. Well, there are some issues, but not 37 issues. So.
Well, he has it in front of him now. He has your version from today, your markup. So I think we're in good shape, but I'll confirm with everybody tomorrow.
And Scott and I are going to try to tape a show with Kevin Tachi to review the warrant again as another means of having people prepared for town meeting.
Yeah, Matt, you can be
That's
part of that if you
excellent.
like.
All
If
right.
anyone wants to join us. But
Yeah.
again, Monday, May 24th, 7 o'clock, we start at town meeting. If people can arrive between 6:30 and 7, closer to 6:30, because the quorum will be 75. And we would like to get started as quickly as possible so we can end as quickly as possible.
Matt, I want to say thank you for your extra effort and all that you do and coordinate for everything for our meetings.
Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that.
Howdy.
Second that.
All right. With that, do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion
Second.
adjourned from Russ, second from Barbara. Any discussion?
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
All those opposed? There is no one opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.